LoveLore Library. Chapter 26. The sisters returned to the outer room. Old Madam smiled and said, "It's almost time today. You should go to Enchanting Garden to learn the rules, right?" "Yes." The girls nodded in unison. The Sun Clan said, "Old Madam, you can study as usual today. Tomorrow morning, I will take Sistery back to Duke Ding's mansion. At that time, Nurse Jean will take the other girls to Enchanting Garden as usual." Old Madam nodded with a smile, as if she didn't hear anything wrong from the Sun Clan's words. Heartwarming, who was glaring at the side, finally couldn't help but pull the Sun Clan's sleeve and said timidly, "Mother, aren't you going to take me? I miss Grandpa and Grandma a little too." In fact, the Sun Clan was a little hesitant. When Sun Yu came just now, he said that Duchess Ding wanted to see the pearl that Qin Huayuan had just found, but he didn't say that she wanted to see her adopted daughter. But on second thought, they said that they wanted to see their granddaughter, but they didn't say which one they wanted to see. They simply pretended to be confused and took Qin Huayuan with them. "Of course, we will take you." The Sun Clan gently tidied Qin Huayuan's temples. "Let's go tomorrow morning." Qin Huayuan took the Sun Clan's arm and smiled coquettishly. The sixth miss on the side said enviously, "Aunt, if there's a chance in the future, you should also take your nieces to your house to have a look. I heard that the garden in Duke Ding's mansion is bigger than ours, and the scenery is more beautiful." Hearing this, the second madam's face became a little ugly. She glared at the sixth miss, but the sixth miss was not as obedient as usual. Instead, she looked at the Sun Clan with a red face and bright eyes. The Sun Clan was complacent by the sixth miss's words. She nodded and said, "If there's a chance in the future, I will take you all there." "Yes, thank you, Aunt." The sixth miss smiled sweetly. Old Madam didn't think much about it. She just thought that the children were playful and innocent. "We're all relatives, so it's good to visit each other more often." This time, Sistery just came back. She must have something to say to grandfather and grandmother. "Next time, all of you will have a chance to visit them." The girls all bowed and said yes. Qin Huayuan had a very fulfilling day. However, perhaps because she was going to Ding General Manor tomorrow, Qin Huayuan seemed absent-minded when she was studying. Qin Huayuan couldn't remember the etiquette and posture that Nanny Jean had taught her several times, so Nanny Jean didn't bother to say more. Moreover, Qin Huayuan also noticed that Qin Huayuan was looking at him with even more venomous eyes, as if there was some kind of grudge between them. In the afternoon, she went to the study in the outer yard as usual and listened to the headmaster's lecture through the screen. When she returned to the Snow Pear courtyard in the evening, it was already dark. Qin Huayuan thought about meeting Duchess Ding tomorrow. Because he didn't know what kind of person she was, he felt a little nervous. She told Ruilan to prepare the clothes for tomorrow and asked Nanny Jean to help her look over them. After making sure that there was nothing wrong with the clothes, she went to bed. However, lying on the bed, she still carefully recalled Nanny Bao who came that day in her mind. It was said that birds of a feather flock together. Nanny Bao was Duchess Ding's right-hand woman, so she naturally had some of Duchess Ding's strength of character. Her words and actions were more similar to her master's. After carefully thinking about all the possible difficulties that might happen and thinking about countermeasures in his heart, Qin Huayuan finally felt relieved and fell asleep. It was a quiet night. The next day, after paying respects to the old madam, Qin Huayuan went back to the Snow Pear courtyard to wash up and change clothes. She chose to wear a water-pink plain satin wide-sleeved brocade jacket, a light yellow 8-piece skirt, and a gorilla red cloak with a white rabbit fur collar. The bright color made Qin Huayuan not lose the delicateness of a young girl, but also the brilliance of a young girl. From the material and workmanship of the clothes, it didn't lose the ostentatiousness of a young girl from a noble family. As for the hair accessories, Qin Yining chose a pair of small lilacs and a begonia hairpin from the set of jasper hair accessories that third madam had given her. Qin Yining's black hair was blue. With the begonia hairpin in her usual bun, her hair looked glossy and black. The hairpin was exquisite and expensive. "Nanny, I don't need cosmetics at my age, right?" Qin Yining looked at the bottles and jars on the dressing table. The fragrance came straight to her nose, making her feel a little suffocated. Nanny Zhan smiled and tidied up Qin Yining's hair on her temples. She smiled and said, "Miss, this is very good. You are born beautiful and young. You don't need those light yellow powders. However, it's cold outside. You only need to use a light jasmine balm to smooth the dough, so that your skin won't be exposed to the wind." Qin Yining smiled and nodded, "I'll listen to Nanny." Qin Yining only brought Ruelan with her when she went to Duke Dinghua's mansion. She could have brought a nanny with her, but Qin Yining found that Nanny Zhan was a good person who kept her head down and didn't say anything. Nanny Zhan was not a servant by her side, so she could only give up on it. In order to go out, Ruelan changed into a dark green jacket and a magenta fur collar. Wearing red and green, she looked very likable because she was young and steady. "Miss, the sedan chair is ready. First Madam said that the carriage will be parked outside the second gate. Let's go out through the west gate. We'll go to the second gate and change carriages first." Qin Yining got into the sedan chair and held an exquisite hand warmer in her hands. Ruelan followed beside the sedan chair and soon went out of the second gate. They changed to a small carriage with oil walls. After a while, they arrived at the west gate. There was already a long line of carriages parked in front of the west gate. The Prime Minister's wife wanted to go back to her parents' home. This time, she was openly bringing her daughter. Naturally, she couldn't just leave in a single carriage like last time. For this trip, the master's carriage had been prepared with 2 canopied tasseled carriages. Behind them, there was also a small flat-top carriage for the old mother. Behind them, there were 2 carriages carrying gifts. Following them were servants, guards, and so on. Altogether, there were at least a few dozen people. Qin Yining stepped on a red stool and got into the first carriage. When he lifted the curtain, he saw that the Sun clan and Qin Yining were already sitting together in the main seats. Mother Jean sat to the left. When she saw Qin Yining come in, she hurriedly bowed and greeted him. Qin Yining returned the greeting and bowed to the Sun clan. Today, the Sun clan was wearing a set of purple robes. The silk cloak on the outside was especially luxurious. There was almost no trace of age on her exquisitely made-up face. Only her dignified and bright appearance could be seen. Qin Huining was dressed in bright colors, but it was beyond Qin Yining's expectations. Qin Yining sat across from Mother Jean and began to openly size up Qin Huining. She wore a dark green silk cloak and an aqua blue robe embroidered with cloud brocade. The color of her entire body was very simple and elegant, but she had put a lot of effort into her makeup. Her willowy eyebrows were slightly raised, and the makeup was just right. Especially her red lips, which were like rose petals, resonated with the red jade beads on her earrings, making her entire appearance brighter. Dressed like this, she was indeed beautiful. It surpassed her original dignified appearance and showed a bit of brilliance. Perhaps it was because Qin Yining was sizing her up that she felt uncomfortable. Qin Huining slightly frowned and asked, "Younger sister Xiao Shi, what are you looking at?" Her red lips parted slightly, revealing her pearly white teeth. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Young lady Huining looks very good dressed like this. I can't help but be mesmerized. I can't compare to younger sister Xiao Shi's natural beauty." It was difficult to conceal the jealousy in his words. She had already tried her best not to lose to Qin Yining in terms of appearance. Because she thought that since it was her first time going to the Duke Dingwa's residence, Qin Yining would definitely dress up carefully. Who would have thought that Qin Yining didn't put on any makeup and didn't even wear much jewelry? The most hateful thing was that Qin Yining's charm and beauty were innate. Even if she didn't put on any makeup, it couldn't be hidden. Originally, Qin Huining still had some pride. Now that she was sitting across from Qin Yining, she felt her pride shatter into pieces. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Mother Jean coughed softly and glanced at the Sun Clan's half-closed eyes, pretending to be asleep. She smiled and said, "Fourth young lady, when you go back to the Duke Dingwa's residence, this old servant will introduce you to the Duke Dingwa's residence, okay?" Her attitude was very respectful and was no longer as impatient as she was when they first met. Qin Yining knew that these people were used to stepping on those in power. She wasn't angry in her heart. Instead, she smiled gratefully and said, "Many thanks, Mother Jean. I was just about to ask you for advice." Mother Jean explained to Qin Yining in a low voice. Although the Duke Dingwa's residence was noble, it was passed down from generation to generation. The family rules were extremely strict. Don't look at their high position and power. The children in the family, especially the 3 generations under the management of the current Duke Dingwa and Duchess Dingwa's wife, had never done any evil deeds of bullying men or women. What made Qin Yining most curious and admirable was that the sisters in the Duke Dingwa's residence were very united. If they were caught by the Duchess Dingwa's wife, they would be severely punished. The Duchess Dingwa's wife said that if the family can't unite, how can they resist outside invaders? A flower may look good from the outside, but if the roots rot, it won't live long. Mother Jin's tone was full of pride. Qin Yining deeply agreed. In comparison, the Prime Minister's residence seemed a bit filthy. The Duke Dingwa's family only had 2 branches. The Sun clan was the eldest daughter of the first wife, but she was ranked 3rd in the clan. The 2 older brothers above her doted on the Sun clan very much. Young lady's eldest uncle and second uncle are both generals who fought against Dezhou. They shouldn't be in the residence right now. However, both aunts are here. There are 6 sisters in the clan and 5 young men. The oldest one is the uncle who came to the residence yesterday to send the invitation. Mother Jean talked about the customs of the Duke Dingwa's residence, then talked about the people in the Duke Dingwa's residence. Qin Yining carefully explained everything. By the time the carriage arrived at the Duke Dingwa's residence, Qin Yining had already learned about the structure and customs of the Duke Dingwa's residence. "Is great aunt back?" The joyous voice of the doorman sounded from outside the carriage. Soon after, someone went into the residence to report, "Quickly go and tell the old madam that great aunt and Miss Biao have returned." The carriage curtains were lifted and the servant set up red lacquered wooden stools. Mother Jean jumped off the carriage first and helped the Sun clan get off. Mama Kai and Bai Tong supported Qin Huining, while Ruilan supported Qin Yining. They went up the steps and through the side door. As soon as the group passed through the E door, they saw 2 noble madams leading a group of young girls out to greet them. Chapter 27. Sister-in-law, your hands are stiff from the cold. Why didn't you bring a hand warmer with you? Sun Shi's tone was light, and her eyes were smiling. She stuffed her carved brass hand stove into the hands of the eldest wife, Yan Shi. Then she went to hold the hands of the second wife, Kong Shi, and rubbed them together, using her warm hands to warm them for her. The 2 sisters-in-law were older than the Sun clan. Ding's general manner was strict, and the 2 older brothers doted on the Sun clan very much. Before Sun clan got married, she didn't get angry with the 2 sisters-in-law even once. The 2 sisters-in-law were closer to each other than the other concubine-born sisters. Now that they saw each other, they were naturally close. Seeing her like this, the girls all laughed. On the side, A young girl around 14 or 15 years old wearing a green, gray, rabbit fur cloak said with a smile, "Auntie, don't believe eldest aunt's words. She speaks as if she's not in a hurry. She just sat at grandmother's place for a while, and eldest aunt looked at the clock for 3 or 4 hours. It was only because my mother said, eldest sister-in-law is so anxious that she can't stay cooped up in the room. Why don't we all come out to welcome her? Perhaps we'll be able to receive her." The young girl's voice was clear and bright, and everyone who heard it laughed again. Qin Yining watched quietly from the side, as if she could feel the family's welcome. There was another young girl wearing a red cloak like Qin Yining. She blinked her big round eyes and had been looking at her for a long time. As if she couldn't hold back her curiosity, she moved closer to Qin Yining like a small animal. Her voice was a bit timid as she bowed and said, "Hello, older sister. I'm Sun Ling. Are you older sister Yining?" Qin Yining quickly returned the greeting, "Hello, older sister Ling. I'm Yining." Sun Clan turned around and said with a smile, "Look at me. When I saw sisters-in-law, I was so focused on talking that I forgot to introduce them. Sister E, come and greet your eldest aunt, second aunt, and cousins." Qin Yining smiled at Sun Ling and bowed to eldest madam and second madam according to the rules that Nanny Jean had taught her. "Hello, eldest aunt, second aunt." "Io-yo." Second aunt, Madam Kong, grabbed Qin Yining's hands and carefully examined them. Then, she clicked her tongue and said, "You really are a jade that has been washed out of water. Everyone says that your seventh cousin in our duke's estate is the most beautiful. Now that you compare her, you can't even compare. Second aunt, you flatter me. It's just that mother dotes on me and is willing to dress me up." Qin Yining smiled and lowered her eyes. Her voice was soft and gentle, and she looked very obedient and lovable. The members of the Sun clan were very happy to hear that. They took Qin Yining's hand and patted it, looking like a loving mother and filial son. There was no trace of their previous cold treatment. Qin Huining, who had been ignored for a long time, looked coldly at the Sun clan and Qin Yining chatting with his two aunts. He felt as if someone had poured a ladle of hot oil on his heart. It took him a long time to adjust his resentful mood. "Hello, eldest aunt, second aunt." Qin Huining also bowed. Eldest aunt seemed to have only just noticed her. She looked at her plain clothes and especially bright makeup. She nodded with a faint smile, but didn't say anything. Second aunt looked at Qin Huining's clothes and said with a smile, "Sister Hui is becoming more and more beautiful." Qin Huining was secretly delighted. She said in a dignified manner, "Second aunt, don't make fun of me. With seventh cousin and younger sister Xiaoxi by my side, aren't we all like mud pigs and dogs in comparison?" As she said this, she covered her mouth and laughed. Although these words were said modestly, if the other sisters were jealous, wouldn't they have been hooked? Eldest aunt and second aunt looked at each other and didn't say anything. The sisters on the side weren't as easy to provoke as the young ladies of the Prime Minister's estate. They all lowered their eyes and pretended not to hear. Qin Yining was secretly amused. She clearly knew the family style of Duke Ding's estate, yet Qin Huining still acted like this. She really didn't know what she was talking about. Qin Huining wanted to show the harmony between sisters, so she took Qin Yining's arm and said with a smile, "Younger sister Xiaoxi, let me introduce you." She pointed to the young girl standing next to second aunt. She was wearing a light pink cloak made of white rabbit fur and said, "This is seventh cousin. She's 3 years older than us. She's already engaged to the young master of the Liu family and will be married in a few days. Hello, seventh cousin." Qin Yining ignored the way Qin Huining addressed her and smiled as she bowed to seventh Miss Sunday's seventh cousin returned the greeting, "Hello, younger sister Yining." Qin Huining then introduced the girl in the jade cloak, the girl in the light blue cloak, and the girl in red who took the initiative to talk to Qin Yining. She said in order, "This is 9th cousin, 10th cousin, and 11th cousin. 10th cousin and 11th cousin are both 14 this year." Qin Yining then bowed in turn. 9th cousin, 10th cousin, and 11th cousin all returned the greeting. 11th Miss smiled as she tugged at Qin Huining's cloak. She then looked at her own and said with a smile, "Older cousin's cloak is made of the same material as mine. It can be seen that we're fated to meet." She then turned her head and looked at Qin Huining with her cat-like eyes. She tilted her head and asked curiously, "Could it be that older cousin Huining doesn't know older cousin Yining's name? Why do you always call her Xiaoxi, Xiaoxi?" When Qin Huining heard this, the smile on her face froze. She secretly cursed 11th Miss, who was only a concubine's daughter of the eldest branch. She actually dared to embarrass her in front of her. The members of the Sun clan were originally chatting with eldest aunt and second aunt. When they heard the commotion over here, they also became somewhat dissatisfied. The atmosphere in her maternal family was different from that of her husband's family. Although marrying Prime Minister Qin was a glorious thing, the atmosphere in her husband's family had always been a sore point in her heart. Although sometimes she felt that there was nothing wrong with the way her husband's family acted, she knew that the people in her maternal family really didn't like that. However, Qin Huining just had to bring out the way of the Prime Minister's manor. When she was in the Prime Minister's manor, the Sun clan didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Qin Huining calling Qin Yining Xiaoxi. Now that she was standing on the grounds of the Duke Dingguofu, she felt angry. However, she couldn't directly reprimand Qin Huining in front of her. Right at this time, Qin Yining smiled and took Qin Huining's hand. She softly explained, "11th cousin, you may not know this, but when I was wandering outside, I was once rescued by my foster mother. My foster mother picked me up by a stream, so she gave me a nickname, Xiaoxi. Miss Huining is a person who knows how to repay kindness. I very much approve of her. The two of us have privately agreed to let her often call me Xiaoxi. She can also remind me at all times to not forget my foster mother's 8 years of kindness in raising me." 11th cousin was very moved when she heard this. She nodded with tears in her eyes. Older sister Yining has suffered outside. Qin Yining's other cousins also gathered around. Although they were curious about Qin Yining's experience outside, their hearts were softened by her words at this moment. However, no one remembered the hatred that Qin Huining had just pulled. The members of the Sun clan let out a sigh of relief when they saw this. They felt that Qin Yining's actions were very sensible. Eldest aunt raised her eyebrows. She looked at Qin Yining with a penetrating gaze and gently smiled. Second aunt pulled on the members of the Sun clan's hand and said with a smile, "Let's go to Chunxi Hall first and talk later. Mother should be waiting anxiously." The members of the Sun clan hurriedly nodded. "That's right. If eldest sister-in-law catches a cold, eldest brother won't be anxious with me if he finds out. You shrew. You only know how to drag me down for no reason. The children are all here, yet you're talking nonsense like this." Eldest aunt laughed and scolded. The maidservants and maidservants also laughed when they saw this. Infected by the joyous atmosphere, Qin Yining also couldn't help but laugh. The group of people cheerfully entered the Chuehua Gate. Duke Dingguo's mansion was a large mansion with 5 rooms on the outside and 7 deep. It was said that this mansion was a prince's mansion in the previous dynasty. Later, the emperor gave it to the Sun clan because of their outstanding military achievements. Although everything had withered in the winter, the exquisite garden design in the mansion was still too much for Qin Yining to take in. She couldn't help fantasizing about how beautiful the scenery here would be when summer came. Seeing that Qin Yining liked it, her cousins all surrounded her and introduced it to her enthusiastically, as if they were welcoming an honored guest. They didn't put on any airs at all. Qin Yining followed them at this time, as if she had become a foil. The smile on her face almost froze, but she still had to maintain her poise. It was only when Mama Kai and Bitong beside her supported her and whispered to her to relieve her boredom that her depressed mood eased a little. They went all the way to Chunchi Hall, where Duke Dinghua's mansion lived. From a distance, maidservants and older female servants came out to greet them, and another maidservant went in to report. As soon as Qin Yining stepped into Chunchi Hall, she saw the sapphire blue bamboo brocade warm curtain of the main room open. A plump woman in her 60s, wearing a dark purple wide-sleeved coat, plain makeup, and a purple fox fur warm hat, walked out first. Behind her, maidservants and older female servants filed out and followed her down the steps. This woman was tall, with wrinkles on her face. There was a faint line between her eyebrows, which made her look a little strict. However, Qin Yining knew that this kind of people usually frowned often. It could be seen that this woman was worried about a lot of things. Her slender eyebrows and her loving eyes were filled with warmth. When she walked, her posture was dignified, and her back was straight. She looked like a very shrewd madam. Almost at a glance, Qin Yining could be sure that this was Duke Dinghua's mansion, her grandmother. Looking at Mama Bao beside her, she was even more sure that her guess was right. Qin Yining was looking at Duke Dinghua's mansion, and Duke Dinghua's mansion was also looking at her. Among the group of girls, Qin Yining was wearing a gorilla red cloak like Cousin 11. Although she didn't wear any makeup, her bright red lips were not as eye-catching as Qin Huining's. Although Qin Yining was not as tall as Cousin 9. However, Duke Dinghua's mansion still saw her at a glance. It was not because she was a stranger, nor was it because she was beautiful enough to outshine all the other girls. It was because of her sharp, gentle, and restrained momentum. Looking at her bright eyes, one could tell that she was intelligent. Looking at her posture, one could tell that she had etiquette and integrity. She was like a sword in its sheath. If she wanted to show off her sharpness, she could show off her sharpness. If she wanted to be gentle and elegant, she could be gentle and elegant. Duke Dinghua's mansion was such an intelligent and experienced woman. What kind of beauty had she not seen before? At first glance, she had long stopped paying attention to appearance. Seeing Qin Yining like this, she was very happy. Moreover, she didn't doubt Qin Yining's identity like the Sun Clan, but she was sure that this girl must be from the Sun Clan. Her granddaughter was so outstanding. How could Duke Dinghua's mansion not be happy? Chapter 28. Grandmother, please accept a bow from your granddaughter. Qin Yining did not dare to be arrogant. She stopped and bowed. The people who came with her naturally avoided her. Duchess Ding's eyes became softer and softer. She held her hand with both hands and said with pity, "Good girl, you don't have to be so polite. Let me take a good look at you." Duchess Ding's hands were dry and warm, which was unique to old people. The heat transmitted to Qin Yining's eyes made her involuntarily tear up. Duchess Ding only looked at Qin Yining's watery eyes, and her heart softened. Some people were fated to like each other at first sight. Duchess Ding looked at Qin Yining like this. Duchess Ding's fingers felt the calluses and scars on Qin Yining's hands. Her heart ached. She held her in her arms and patted her. She choked back sobs and said, "Poor child, you have suffered all these years." Her words made Qin Yining's tears fall uncontrollably. The warm and soft embrace and the elegant incense on Duchess Ding's body touched the softest and most fragile part of her heart. She forced herself not to cry at this good time. "Grandmother, don't be sad. No matter what happened in the past, it's all in the past. Let's look forward. There's no need to look back." These words went straight to Duchess Ding's heart. She nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, it's all in the past." It's all in the past. Eldest aunt and second aunt, who had been moved and kept wiping their tears, also nodded hurriedly. Even the Sun clan, who had been emotional after finding their daughter, couldn't help crying for a while. The scene of hugging and crying in the cold wind was too sad. Eldest aunt sniffed and said, "Look at how happy mother is. She doesn't even care about the weather. Why did she come out wearing the soft shoes in the room? Put them on carefully." Mother Bao wiped the corners of her eyes with her sleeve and said cooperatively, "Old Madam can't wait to see her granddaughter. She won't even let me help her change her shoes." "You're talking about me. I don't know who can't sit still here." Duchess Ding teased her two daughters-in-law. The sorrowful atmosphere was diluted, and only joy remained. Everyone laughed and jostled into the room. Even the little girl who lifted the curtain was full of smiles, as if she was celebrating the new year. Qin Yining had been smiling with tears in his eyes the entire time. He listened to his aunt and grandmother talking about their concern for him, but he couldn't get a word in edgewise. She had fantasized about this scene countless times on her way back to the capital from Liang City. Who would have thought that what he couldn't get in his own family, he would get it in his maternal grandparents' house? Last night, she tossed and turned in bed, thinking of all those unexpected situations and solutions. It seemed that all of them were useless. She was the one who was worrying for nothing and had the heart of a villain. Duchess Ding was served by her two daughters-in-law and sat at the head of the table. Eldest aunt, second aunt, and the members of the Sun clan sat on the side. Mama Bao brought a praying mat for Qin Yining. Qin Yining knelt down and bowed respectfully. Granddaughter greets grandmother and aunts. "Get up, get up." Duchess Ding leaned over to support her and pulled her up to sit next to her. "Are you used to living here? Do you still lack anything? Your mother has a bad temper and is careless. If she dares to neglect you carelessly, come and tell grandmother that I hit her." Duchess Ding spoke so quickly that Qin Yining couldn't get a word in edgewise. She could only shake her head repeatedly, indicating that she hadn't been neglected. "Mother, you're biased. Now that Sister Yi is here, she's better than me." The members of the Sun clan's face flushed when they heard their biological mother's words. They couldn't help but remember that they had hit their child and warned her sternly. However, this child had always understood the big picture and helped them maintain their dignity. They felt a little guilty. "How old are you? Why are you still arguing with your daughter? I won't talk about your impatient temper. You should use your brain more in the future. Don't be the wind and rain when others say that you are the rain." Duchess Ding tapped the Sun clan's forehead. When Qin Huining heard this, her face instantly turned as pale as paper. She lowered her head and secretly observed Duchess Ding's expression. The members of the Sun clan shrank their necks and stuck out their tongues with a smile on their faces. This made the girls laugh, and the noise and laughter spread far away. Qin Huining was extremely nervous. She knew that her grandmother wasn't a simple person. She wasn't as easy to manipulate as the members of the Sun clan. Her words just now clearly had a hidden meaning. Ever since they arrived at Duke Ding's mansion, that wild hussy had always been the focus of everyone's attention. Even her grandmother could only see her. It was as if she had become transparent. Qin Huining was already jealous and resentful of being treated so poorly. But now, those resentful feelings were extinguished by Duchess Ding's words. All that was left was the panic of losing favor. She hurriedly bowed to Duchess Ding and said with a smile, "Grandmother, you look better these days." Duchess Ding held Qin Yining's hand, gently patted the back of her hand, and said with a smile, "Yes, I'm living a comfortable life. Your two aunts and cousins are filial to me. Now, I don't care about this family anymore. If there is anything wrong, your aunt will take it on herself. She won't mention a word of groundless accusations in front of me. I have nothing to do, and I just want to enjoy my grandchildren. Tell me, how can I not look well? Qin Huining's head buzzed, and her face alternated between red and white. She forced a smile and said, Grandmother is a Dai Fu person. My aunts and cousins are filial, and my uncles and cousins are also hardworking. Yes. Duchess Ding looked at Qin Yining with a smile and said, Our sister Yi has suffered a lot in the past. Now that she has returned home, the calamity has passed. There will be good days in the future, so Sister Yi is also blessed. Everyone laughed in agreement, and they began to chat at once. Qin Huining angrily retreated to the side and stood still. Her hands hidden in her sleeves were clenched into fists, and her palms were almost bleeding from her long nails. She didn't expect that Duchess Ding would embarrass her like this. Duchess Ding's words had repeatedly knocked her down. She didn't know if others could understand, but the Sun clan probably could. Qin Huining looked at the Sun clan uneasily, only to see that the Sun clan was looking in the direction of Duchess Ding and Qin Yining with a smile. She didn't know what they had heard, but they were laughing happily. Perhaps feeling her gaze, the Sun clan turned their heads inquiringly. The two of them looked at each other, and the resentment in Qin Huining's eyes that she couldn't hide in time fell into the Sun clan's eyes. The Sun clan was stunned. Thinking about what Duchess Ding had said just now, and then thinking about how Qin Huining didn't forget to play tricks in front of her cousins today, she didn't like it in her heart, so she didn't call her to her side to comfort her as usual and continued to talk to her two sisters-in-law. She actually ignored her. Qin Huining gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. Now she could see who was close and who was distant. These people's hearts were too crooked. It was true that she had been swapped, and she had occupied the position of Qin Yining's legitimate daughter for 14 years, but how could they blame her for this? She was also a victim. But now they were giving her a hard time. They treated her like this, so how could they blame her for fighting for it? Old Madam. The head maidservant came in to salute and said with a smile, Duke and eldest son have returned from court, and Steward Wang from the palace came with them. He said that there was an imperial edict. He told our whole family to go to the front to receive the edict. Did Steward Wang, the emperor's personal attendant, come in person? Duchess Ding's voice was a little high in the silence. The head maidservant nodded, yes, this servant asked the servant who followed us. He said that Duke and eldest son were very happy. Steward Wang was also very polite. He just told the young men not to come to Chunshi Hall first, and to go to the front to see Steward Wang first to prepare to receive the edict. Second aunt clapped her hands, I was wondering why those children hadn't come yet. It turned out that there was a good thing. Mother, it's most likely a good thing for the old men. Duchess Ding and eldest aunt also guessed the same, and both of them had a happy expression on their faces. Duke Ding's whole family was the mainstay of fighting against Dezhou's invasion. Whether it was heir apparent Sun Haifan, second master Sun Haijing, who was now fighting against the enemy on the front line, or Sun Yu, who was an official in the court, the civil officials and military generals, they were all the sharp blades of the emperor's pro-war faction. Now that Steward Wang came in person, it must be to reward one of the men of Duke Ding's mansion. At this time, they didn't have time to talk. Duchess Ding, eldest aunt, second aunt, and the Sun clan all hurriedly went to put on makeup. The girls also straightened their clothes, and then quickly went to the front yard to burn incense and receive the edict. It was the first time that Qin Yining had seen such a scene, so she was inevitably a little nervous. She knelt at the back of the womenfolk with her cousins, listening to Steward Wang's slightly shrill voice read the imperial edict. By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees that Sun Yu, the descendant of Duke Ding of Hanlin Academy, is an upright person with both talent and integrity. He has self-restraint and high integrity. He doesn't wallow in the mire. His loyalty can be seen and deeply comforts my heart. He will be promoted to Hanlon Academy's lecturer and be rewarded with 100 taels of gold. Thank you, Your Majesty. Everyone kowtowed in unison. Steward Wang handed over the imperial edict with both hands and said with a smile, Lord Sun, congratulations. Sun Yu took the imperial edict with both hands and hurriedly said with a smile, Thank you, Steward Wang. Please have tea in the flower hole. Duke Ding stood up and said with a smile, Thank you for coming, Steward Wang. You must taste my good tea before you go back. Steward Wang smiled until his eyes curved into crescents. He bowed and said, Thank you, Duke. It would be impolite of me to refuse. Please. Duke Ding and Sun Yu went to entertain Steward Wang together. The womenfolk and the rest of the young masters returned to Chuanxi Hall together. After they changed clothes and washed up, they sat down again. The atmosphere became lively again. Oh, it's really a great thing, a great blessing. Sun Yu took eldest aunt's hands and said, It's hard for my sister-in-law to raise such a good son. He has entered the pavilion at such a young age and has been promoted to Hanlon Academy's lecturer with his talent. He can even be rewarded by the emperor. Our family is the first to have such an honor. Eldest uncle smiled and waved his hand, Look at what you're saying. Brother Ming is just lucky. And this time, he really poked the emperor's itch. With that said, everyone was curious. Duchess Ding asked, I'm also wondering why the emperor specially ordered Steward Wang to announce the imperial edict and reward him. Not only did he promote him, but he also rewarded him with 100 taels of gold. Chapter 29. Eldest aunt sighed softly. This isn't a secret. I didn't tell mother before because I was afraid that mother would be anxious if she heard it. Before, someone from Dezhou contacted Brother Ming and asked him to join Dezhou. During this time, he said all kinds of bad things about our emperor. He also said that little Wang Yi from Dezhou was brave and that sooner or later, the iron hooves of the tiger army led by him would trample our Dian's mountains and rivers. When the female family members heard this, they all gasped. Duchess Ding frowned. Second aunt also covered her mouth and exclaimed. The Sun clan was the most direct. She grabbed eldest aunt's hand and said, Eldest sister-in-law, the people of Dian are not good. If this spread to His Majesty's ears, wouldn't we be giving them a handle? What if they put the hat of treason on us? Didn't it spread to His Majesty's ears? Brother Ming sternly refused the lobbyist on the spot. He even took off his official uniform and went to His Majesty to ask for punishment. You also know that His Majesty is suspicious. But in the end, he passed this hurdle without any mishap. Qin Yining didn't know much about the higher-ups in the capital, but he knew all kinds of rumors about the emperor. Among the people, there were many who scolded the emperor, old and dim-sighted, muddle-headed and incompetent. He favored the demon empress and let the treacherous officials take power. In particular, the emperor favored his father-in-law, Grand Preceptor Chao, and condoned the infighting among the princes. As a result, half of the Dian imperial court was in the hands of Grand Preceptor Chao. The princes withered, and now only the crown prince was left. There was no choice when it came to inheriting the throne. Eldest aunt sighed again and said faintly, Brother Ming has offended the people of the great Zhou dynasty and has been the first to stick his neck out for so many years. I'm really worried. Although he has a gentle temperament, when he's stubborn, even 9 oxen can't pull him back. Forget it, it's all in the past. Fortunately, His Majesty believed Brother Ming. Duchess Ding patted her daughter-in-law's hand. Her eyes were gentle and kind, indicating that her children were here and that she should not say anything more. Only then did eldest aunt manage to recover from her worry. She smiled and said, It's about time. Mother, I'll go to the kitchen to take a look. The banquet will start soon. Let's set the banquet in the warm room, okay? Of course. Eldest aunt stood up and left. Second aunt then called over the two cousins who had followed her in just now and introduced them to each other. Sister E, this is your fifth cousin, and this is your eighth cousin. Your second and fourth cousins have both joined the army and are not at home at the moment. Qin Yining hurriedly stood up and bowed to fifth cousin and eighth cousin. The men of the Sun family were very tall. Thick eyebrows and high noses were their characteristics. Fifth cousin and eighth cousin were in their early 20s, and the other was 17 or 18 years old. They were very polite to Qin Yining. Perhaps there was a big age gap, or perhaps there was a difference between men and women, but they did not talk much. They sat down again and chatted for a while. Qin Yining learned that the 5 cousins of the Sun family, except for eldest cousin Sun Yu, were all married. Now eldest uncle and second uncle were guarding Xihua City, not far from the capital. Second cousin and fourth cousin were also in Xihua City with their families. They rarely came back in a long time. Fifth cousin sister-in-law and eighth cousin sister-in-law were pregnant. One was about to give birth, and the other was just pregnant. The fetus was unstable, so it was inconvenient for them to walk around. Therefore, they did not come out today. Since it's inconvenient for cousin sister-in-law, there will be plenty of time in the future. I'm not afraid that there won't be a day to meet her. Qin Yining said with a smile, Cousin, please send my regards. Fifth cousin and eighth cousin both nodded with a smile, come more often in the future. There will be many opportunities to meet. Seeing that the younger generation got along well with each other, Duchess Ding smiled very happily. While they were talking, a maidservant outside came in and said, Old madam, the banquet has been set. Duke and eldest uncle have gone to the warm room. Madam, miss, and young master, please go to the warm room. Let's go to the warm room. Duchess Ding stood up with a smile. The accompanying maidservants in the room served their masters to dress up. The group of people went to the warm room in a mighty manner, talking and laughing. The warm room was heated. As soon as they entered the room, they felt the heat on their faces, accompanied by the aroma of food, making them feel the warmth of home. There was an 8-section screen with black lacquer and green bamboo in the middle of the room, separating the two tables. The men were on the other side, and the women were sitting around a table. Since entering the warm room, Duchess Ding had been holding Qin Yining's hand. When they sat down, Qin Yining naturally sat next to Duchess Ding. The members of the Sun clan sat on the other side of his biological mother. Qin Yining pursed his red lips and sat next to the members of the Sun clan with his eyes lowered. Then, his cousin sat next to him. Eldest aunt and second aunt stood next to Duchess Ding. They all took the serving chopsticks and served the dishes. Duchess Ding laughed. I don't want you to set the rules today. Sit down. Let's have a good meal as a family. Eldest aunt put a piece of sweet and sour fish without bones on the exquisite 5-blessing birthday plate in front of Duchess Ding and said with a smile, Mother loves your daughter-in-law, so I can't be arrogant. Second aunt also said, That's right. I'm used to serving Mother. Mother, don't refuse. Qin Yining secretly looked at eldest aunt and second aunt's expressions and found that they were very sincere and happy. They didn't speak insincerely. Big families paid particular attention to the rule of not talking while eating. Only the sound of bowls and plates could be heard in the warm room, but Qin Yining felt that the atmosphere was light and cheerful. After everyone finished eating, the maidservants came in with sputum boxes, tea bowls, brass basins, and handkerchiefs to help their masters rinse their mouths and wash their hands. After everything was done, tea was served. After all, Qin Yining had just returned to the noble family, so she naturally became the focus of attention. The sisters secretly looked at her, and Duchess Ding observed Qin Yining's behavior all the time. She found that her sitting posture was dignified, her back was straight, and she was calm and composed. She had a kind of temperament and gentleness of a lady from a noble family. There was no mistake in her manners and etiquette. If no one talked about her past, it was impossible to tell that she had just returned home for a few days. Duchess Ding nodded secretly. This girl was willing to study so hard. On the one hand, she was smart. On the other hand, it was because she could judge the situation. After determining the situation, she had a strong ability to carry it out. With such a person by the Sun clan side, she could at least say a few words when she saw something. Duchess Ding could also feel a little relieved that the Sun clan didn't have to be a gun for Qin Yining alone like in the past. You can remove the screen. We are not outsiders. Sister Yi should also meet your grandfather. Yes. The maidservants carried the screen away. Mother Bao walked to the door and glanced at the maidservants serving in the room. Everyone immediately understood and followed Mother Bao out of the warm room. They carefully closed the door and retreated to the gate of the courtyard to wait for orders. Only the family members were left in the room. Duke Ding and Duchess Ding got up and sat in the main seats again. The rest of the sisters stood aside according to their identities. Qin Yining knelt on the bright red carpet surrounded by flowers. Duke Ding bowed deeply and said, Sister Yi pays her respects to grandfather. Get up. Duke Ding's voice was low and deep, like a large bell. It was obvious that Duke Ding was in good health. Qin Yining took the opportunity to look up and quickly sized him up. Duke Ding was nearly 70 years old. He was tall, had a ruddy face, and his eyes were bright. He was an extremely dignified and hale old man. Duke Ding asked Duchess Ding, who was beside him, don't you have a gift for Sister Yi? I was about to tell Sister Yi. Duchess Ding handed a bowl of warm tea to Duke Ding, and then pretended to be angry and said, You're the only one who knows how to be a good person. You beat me to the words I wanted to say. Duke Ding laughed and almost spat out a mouthful of tea. Look, how old are you? You're still distorting me like this. The girls and young men were used to seeing their grandparents like this, so they all laughed. Qin Yining also couldn't help laughing. Grandfather and grandmother had a good relationship. This family was also very kind. In contrast, the Prime Minister's mansion was much colder and more difficult to get along with. Duchess Ding waved at Qin Yining. Qin Yining obediently went to stand beside Duchess Ding. Good boy. You've suffered so much outside over the years. Now the bitterness is over and the sweetness is coming. Duchess Ding patted the back of Qin Yining's hand lovingly and said, Now I'll give you the Xiaoyun agency. In the future, you'll be in charge of the operation and management. All the profits will belong to you. You don't have to give them to your mother or anyone else. I'll give you such a deal. First, I'll let you learn how to operate and practice. If you really need to manage the general affairs in the future, you won't be in the dark. Second, I'll give you some private money. There are still many places where you need money. Qin Yining had been obediently listening to her grandmother's words. Out of the corner of her eye, she looked at the expressions of the people around her. When she saw that everyone's expressions were slightly subtle, especially Qin Yining suddenly biting her lower lip, she knew that the Xiaoyun agency must be a good thing. However, she didn't know what the Xiaoyun agency was. She only knew that this industry would definitely make a lot of profit. It was a large amount of profit. She couldn't believe that it was given to her for free. Instinctively, she had doubts in her heart. Qin Yining looked at Duchess Ding uneasily and said, Grandmother, how can I manage these things? What girl? Naturally, there will be someone for you to order. I'll give you the original Master Zhong's document of seeking refuge later. He's a suitable person. Don't worry. Did it mean that Qin Yining was just a name? She could just sit there and enjoy the dividends in the future. She became even more uneasy. Qin Yining never thought that there was a free lunch in the world. But she also knew that her grandmother would never harm her. Hearing this, the Sun clan finally couldn't sit still and said, "Mother, how can a little girl like her know how to operate? The Zhaoyun agency is such a big industry. She may not understand it. Losing money is a small matter. If she offends someone, won't it make trouble for the family? Besides, I remember that the Zhaoyun agency used to be the industry under the name of Brother Ming, right? How can it be given to Sister Yi now?" Qin Yining raised her eyes in surprise and met Sun Yu's gentle gaze. Chapter 30. When Qin Yining heard this, she couldn't help but look at Duchess Ding. She didn't know what kind of place Zhaoyun agency was, but in order to give her Zhaoyun agency, her grandmother actually used good fields and shops to exchange with her eldest cousin. It was no wonder that when her grandmother mentioned it just now, her cousins looked a little different. The Sun clan was also a little surprised. She really couldn't imagine how a girl who had just returned home and wasn't familiar with her family could be so likable. She could even make her mother spend so much money. "Mother, we appreciate your kindness, but Zhaoyun agency is really not suitable for a girl who doesn't know anything to run. As I said just now, there are so many officials and dignitaries in Zhaoyun agency. If she really offends someone, it won't be a joke. Besides, she just came back and hasn't recognized all the characters yet. How can she be qualified to run any business? The Prime Minister's manor doesn't lack food or clothes for her. When she came home, her grandmother didn't give her any money or shops. Why should our family spend so much money?" The first half of the sentence was reasonable, but the second half made Duchess Ding frown, and the people present were slightly embarrassed. Duke Ding didn't want to participate in these things, so he called his cousins out and left the warm room to the women. When they saw their father leave like this, the Sun clan realized that they might have said something that Duke Ding didn't like to hear. Since childhood, Duke Ding had this habit. Whenever his brothers and sisters made a mistake, Duke Ding would avoid them and leave the space for Duchess Ding to show off. As soon as the men left, Duchess Ding said in a deep voice, "What you just said was inappropriate. How did he learn these tricks to compare himself to others after leaving home for a few days? As a mother, don't you know the principle of teaching by example? Aren't you afraid that your daughter will learn from you how to compete with others and not be harmonious sisters?" The Sun clan didn't accept it, so they lowered their heads and didn't say a word. Qin Yining's face turned red and white. Wasn't Duchess Ding indirectly scolding the locust tree? When eldest aunt and second aunt saw that Duchess Ding was angry, they hurriedly persuaded her, "Mother, don't be angry. Sister Han is just a child. She speaks without thinking. A child's temperament, outspoken. She was already in her 40s. You still don't know how to make progress." Duchess Ding rubbed her forehead and scolded, "Have you forgotten what I told you that day?" Seeing that their mother was really angry, the members of the Sun clan felt wronged, but they didn't dare to talk back. They bowed their heads and admitted their mistakes. Duchess Ding took 2 deep breaths before saying, "You don't understand. Fortunately, you're lucky enough to have Sister Yi by your side, who can see things clearly. In the future, you should also be more careful. Don't believe everything that others say. If you encounter any major matters in Qin's mansion, you can discuss them with Sister Yi. I also believe that Sister Yi will be able to manage the Zhaoyun agency. Even if you don't have the ability, does your daughter not have it? Don't forget whose daughter Sister Yi is." The members of the Sun clan were scolded like quails. They didn't dare to breathe loudly. Although they felt indignant, they felt an inexplicable sense of honor. Perhaps Qin Yining inherited her father's intelligence. Qin Yining saw that her grandmother was scolding her daughter and had no right to interrupt, so she could only feel anxious. Seeing that the topic had finally come to an end, she hurriedly went to persuade Duchess Ding with eldest aunt and second aunt. Duchess Ding's anger wasn't directed at others. In order to avoid embarrassment, she went along with it. Sister E, you just came back. I don't think you know much about the Zhao Yun Agency. I'll ask Mama Bao to tell you what kind of business Zhao Yun Agency does. In addition, later, ask Mama Bao to send the shop's account books, documents, and other things to your home. Yes. Qin Yining obediently answered. Mama Bao smiled and curtsied. Miss, please follow this servant. Thank you, Mama Bao. Qin Yining avoided her salute and returned half a salute. The two of them politely left the warm room and walked out. Duchess Ding and her two aunts looked at their figures and smiled with satisfaction. Seeing that the members of the Sun clan were whispering something to Qin Yining, Duchess Ding felt a headache again. She couldn't help but start scolding her daughter again. I think Sister E knows when to advance and when to retreat. This granddaughter of mine is the best. In the future. Let's not talk about the Sun clan being scolded by Duchess Ding. Qin Yining followed Mama Bao to a quiet place in the yard to talk. Miss, I think you don't know the origin of Zhao Yun Agency, right? Yes. Can you tell me what kind of business it is? Mama Bao said with a smile, Zhao Yun Agency is somewhat similar to the musical house of the previous dynasty, but it is different. Miss should know that some ministers who are convicted will implicate their families, right? Yes, I know. Qin Yining nodded. Mama Bao said, some ministers who were convicted were beheaded or exiled. The women and their families, whether they were 80-year-old mothers or 3-year-old beauties, were all treated as official prostitutes. Miss, please note that this prostitute is not the one in the word woman. Yes. In the past, the imperial court ran its own musical house, so these official prostitutes were all sent to the musical house. It can be said that they each performed their own duties, depending on their ability. The older ones couldn't do the work on the table, so they were assigned to work in the kitchen, the woodshed, the cleaning, and the like. The younger girls were temporarily raised, and those of the same age were sent to the front of the musical house to entertain guests. Although this dynasty promotes etiquette, those high officials and nobles who visit the musical house especially like to choose the families of their former colleagues to humiliate them. Most people don't pay cash, so it is common to buy on credit, so the musical house has been losing money. There's such a person. Qin Yining was dumbfounded. Mama Bao smiled. There are all kinds of people in this big world. This musical house was originally the business of the Emperor Emeritus. How could the Emperor Emeritus allow his business to always lose money? Therefore, in a fit of anger, he closed the musical house. Since he couldn't find anyone to get back the money he had invested, it was all for naught. There was no place to deal with those criminals, but he couldn't not raise them. Later, his subordinates came up with an idea, and we have the Zhao Yun Agency now. The Emperor Emeritus reopened the musical house, but it doesn't do business with the outside world anymore. It only raises those criminals who were convicted by the big families. The Zhao Yun Agency is in charge of the business on the surface, but all the employees of the industries under the Zhao Yun Agency, except for a few shopkeepers, have to be rented from the musical house. Qin Yining understood immediately. He nodded and said, this idea is really good. In this way, the Emperor Emeritus's musical house can raise these criminals and rent them out without losing money. The Zhao Yun Agency also needs to hire people to run the business. If they hire these criminals, not only will they have labor, but it can also be considered a big business feature. Madame Zhen is right. Miss is smart and understood it immediately. To be honest, this idea was given to the Emperor Emeritus by the old Duke Ding. The Emperor Emeritus was happy, so he gave the Zhao Yun Agency to the old Duke Ding to run. It has been passed down to the present and is now in the hands of the old master. However, you know the old master's temperament. Speaking of this, Mama Bao sighed and said, originally, there were 2 restaurants, 2 inns, and 2 brothels under the Zhao Yun Agency's management. But the old master is stubborn and can't stand those filthy things. He closed the 2 brothels as soon as he took over. So, the Zhao Yun Agency that is now in Mrs. Han's has 3 restaurants and 2 inns. The old master renovated the original brothel and opened a restaurant. The business is doing well. However, because of the war these years, the old master has no intention of running the business. Now, there is still a brothel that is idle. At this point, Qin Yining completely understood the origin of the Zhao Yun Agency. It was no wonder that the Sun clan had opposed it. Now, the Zhao Yun Agency had 3 restaurants, 2 inns, and an immovable property. This was a large sum of money. Not to mention that property, just the restaurants and inns that were profitable now, how much money would they make every year? So all of this suddenly became her own money. Also, the Zhao Yun Agency's renting of convicts from the Royal Musical House was a major feature. Then, everyone in the restaurants and inns were all convicts. These criminal women might have been the old madam of some big family in the past, or they might have been the most beautiful young lady in a city. Perhaps the one pouring tea in the inn was even the head of a family in the inner chamber. Although these people were punished by their families, but in Qin Yining's eyes, these odd job workers had a big background. Miss, is there anything you don't understand? Mama Bao saw Qin Yining frowning and pondering and couldn't help but ask. Qin Yining shook her head with a smile and said, as expected, grandmother gave me a generous gift. Although I am ashamed to accept it, I will certainly live up to grandfather and grandmother's painstaking efforts. I will manage it well and make good use of the connections. Mama Bao was shocked when she heard this. Her eyes flashed, and she nodded repeatedly and said, good. Miss is so smart. You really don't let down madam's expectations. This old servant is relieved. The 2 went back and chatted for a while. Seeing that it was getting late, the Sun clan took Qin Yining and Qin Huaining to leave. Mama Bao returned the conversation to Duchess Ding word for word. Duchess Ding asked, did she really say that? Yes. Miss Biao has a clever mind. She understood immediately. This old servant only told her the origin of the Zhao Yun Agency. I didn't go into detail, but she already understood the important points. She is indeed the daughter of a wise Panin. Mama Bao praised. Duchess Ding also laughed when she heard this. Old madam, the master is here. The maidservant outside lifted the warm curtain and saw Sun Yu walking in quickly. Duchess Ding bowed to him. Grandmother. Brother Ming, come and sit down. It's warm. Sun Yu moved his chair and sat down next to Duchess Ding. He asked straightforwardly, Grandmother, I just heard that something happened to Zhao Yun Agency these 2 days. Did you already know about it? Duchess Ding nodded with a smile, yes, I know. Chapter 31. There's nothing bad about it. Duchess Ding's eyes and eyebrows were full of smiles. You don't know that girl, but I think she has the ability to handle it well. Grandmother, you have so much confidence in her. Sun Yu smiled playfully. Duchess Ding said, I just think that this child is very good. She has suffered a lot in the outside world over the years. I think that a girl who has experienced the wind and rain and can survive strong will be able to withstand the destruction better than those delicate flowers born in a greenhouse. In addition, she is smart and has a good mind. Her nature is very pure. I think this matter can be regarded as a good karma between us and her. On the other hand, it can be regarded as a test so that I can understand her thoroughly. Grandmother, you praise her like a flower. Forget it. In fact, it's nothing. Although it's a big matter, my cousin is just a girl in the boudoir. It doesn't involve anything else. At worst, she will lose a shopkeeper. It won't hurt her. Yes. I think so too. Duchess Ding looked solemn and said, if she can't handle it well, she will lose a shopkeeper at most. She is the daughter of the Prime Minister. Even if those old antiques in Qinglu want to blame her, they can't blame her. After all, her father can take the blame. Besides, with your position in the court, this matter is too difficult to handle. Why don't you throw it aside and let a little girl deal with it? So that others won't say that you are afraid of the powerful. That's right. Sun Yu nodded and said with a sigh, but the Tang family has ruined things. The people of Qinglu are all staring at me. But I just shrunk my neck and gave the property to others. In the end, it's not good to hear. Besides, mother knows uncle's character. I'm afraid that he will turn his back on us and use cousin as a scapegoat. Even if nothing happens, Qin Meng has long been against those people in Qinglu. Besides, can the Tang family's matter be a small matter? What a big crime it is to murder the Empress. Not to mention that the Emperor only favors the Empress. Can Grand Preceptor Chao let the person who murdered his daughter get away with it? Even if he has the ability to get the person from King Ning, how can he avoid Grand Preceptor Chao? Sun Yu's face turned cold. He said indignantly, I know what grandmother said is reasonable. However, I don't think Qinglu did anything wrong. She could only blame the Demon Empress for having such a tough life. Imperial physician Tang had sacrificed his entire family, but she was only half dead from the poison. His Majesty has become more and more muddle-headed these years, truly. Brother Ming, watch your words. Duchess Ding stopped Sun Yu's words and said in a deep voice, there are some things that you should know in your heart. There's no need to say them out loud. If you're so careless outside, aren't you afraid of causing trouble? You're too stubborn. You need to learn how to deal with things tactfully in order to have a long term. Sun Yu hurriedly stood up and saluted, yes. Grandson will follow grandmother's instructions. Duchess Ding saw that the atmosphere was too depressing, so she brought the topic back to family matters. Inside the carriage, Qin Huining was looking pitifully at the Sun clan. The lipstick on her lips had been wiped off. Coupled with her plain dress and pitiful expression with tears in her eyes, she looked like a little animal that had been bullied. Her soft eyes kept looking at the Sun clan, which finally made the Sun clan sigh. Sister Hui, you can't do this again in the future. In front of your maternal grandfather's family, you should at least consider the dignity of our family. You know that your maternal grandfather's family doesn't like our Prime Minister's mansion, and they do things differently. Why do you have to call Sister Yi Xiaoxi in front of your sister? Sister Yi has been back for so many days. Why can't you remember her name? The tears in Qin Huining's eyes fell down like broken beads. I just called her daughter out of habit. The first time I called her Xiaoxi, so I got used to it. It wasn't intentional. Qin Yining, who was at the side, looked down and pretended not to hear anything. The Sun clan glanced at Qin Yining and saw Qin Huining crying like a pear blossom in the rain. They thought that this child had a hard life. She had been swapped since she was a baby. What did a little baby know? It wasn't her fault at all. It was understandable that she would be frightened and uneasy. Thinking of this, the Sun clan's heart softened. She took a handkerchief and wiped Qin Huining's tears. Why are you crying? You look like a cat. How are you going to face people later? Those who don't know will think that the Duke Dinggua's mansion is bullying you. Qin Huining hurriedly wiped her tears and anxiously said, I won't cry. I didn't mean it that way. I know. You should pay more attention to what you say in the future. A normal joke can offend everyone. What you said just now, I don't know what our sisters will think. The people of the Duke Dingwa's mansion are kind and honest. They definitely won't think too much. Qin Huining blew her nose and smiled innocently at the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan choked. They didn't know how to respond. Hearing this, Qin Yining finally opened her eyes. She looked at Qin Huining with a faint smile and said, "Miss Huining, don't confuse the definition. When you say something wrong, others don't care. That's because they are magnanimous. If you can say something like that, it means that you have a bad character. How can you confuse the two? Mother is lecturing you about your character. Do you think that because the people of the Duke Dingwa's mansion don't care about it, you are justified?" Qin Huining's tears gushed out again as if a gate had been opened. She sobbed and said, "Xiaoxi. Yining is right." Chapter 32. Duchess Ding gave Qin Yining such a big industry, which gave her enough face and also gave face to the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan immediately felt honored in front of her in-law's family. She couldn't hide her pride and complacency as she said, "I originally didn't want it, but her grandmother insisted on giving it to her. She said that this child caught her eye and couldn't be stopped." This industry was originally her cousin Yuan Ming's industry. In order to give it to her, her grandmother specially exchanged good fields and shops with her cousin. I said that she, a maidservant, didn't know how to run a business, but I was reprimanded. She said that I was too protective of the child and refused to give her a chance to practice. It was really difficult. When the Sun Clan said this, she shook her head and felt very helpless. These words were embellished and slapped old Madam's face with banknotes. The Sun Clan thought in her heart, "You, as a grandmother, didn't give any money to the child when he came back. You also arranged the farthest courtyard for him. If he wants to save for himself, he needs my maternal family to do it. It seems that everything in our Duke Dingfu is inlaid with gold. Your Prime Minister's manner is a miser." Obviously, when the Sun Clan thought like this, they had forgotten that she and old Madam had the same idea a few days ago. They didn't want Qin Yining to live in the manor and almost sent him to the fields. How could old Madam, second Madam, and third Madam not understand the Sun Clan's complacency? However, the facts were in front of them. The people of Duke Dingfu were indeed blinding their eyes with shining silver. If they really wanted to fight for this, they would have to give Qin Yining an industry similar to Zhao Yun Agency. Not to mention that the Prime Minister's manor's current industry was nothing more than some good fields, forests, shops, and fields. Even the businesses they operated were some ink and brush shops, silk and satin estates. Although they were profitable, they weren't as good as Zhao Yun Agency. Moreover, even if there was such a good industry, old Madam wouldn't be willing to give it to a girl as a dowry. In the end, the foundation of the Prime Minister's manor wasn't as good as the Duke Dingfu that had been passed down for generations. Duchess Ding could throw money at people, but they couldn't. Old Madam wisely chose to play dumb at this moment. Second Madam and third Madam were naturally unwilling to allow their mother-in-law to give the property to the eldest son's daughter. After all, the Prime Minister's estate had not been separated yet. The eldest son's wife did not have a son, but the second and third branches had plenty of sons. The two sisters-in-law complimented Duchess Ding's generosity tacitly, and praised Qin Yining for being sensible and likable for being favored by Duchess Ding. They also did not forget to praise Qin Yining for inheriting his father's intelligence, which made the members of the Sun Clan blush and smile from ear to ear. Qin Yining looked at the Sun Clan's childish behavior and could not help but sigh. She suddenly understood why Duchess Ding couldn't hold back her anger today and reprimanded the Sun Clan in front of everyone. If she had a daughter who was in her 40s but still acted like a 14-year-old, blindly following her heart and not considering the opinions of others, she would also be annoyed. However, Qin Yining felt that she was now like an isolated person. Everyone only circled around Qin Yining and took away everything she originally had. She had lived in the family Qin for 14 years. Although she was loved by old madam and her mother, she had never seen anyone praise her to the heavens like this. In the past, when she was still treated as their biological daughter, no one had ever praised her for being like her father or having the style of her father. Looking at the faces of second aunt and third aunt, Qin Yining felt extremely sick of it. Wasn't it because Qin Yining had a Zhao Yunzi, but she didn't have one before? Since she was a child, her grandmother didn't like her very much. However, no matter how much she disliked her, she had still lived with her grandmother for 14 years. Could it be that her 14 years couldn't compare to Qin Yining's meeting with Duchess Ding? Qin Yining gnashed her teeth. If it weren't for the fact that she still had some rationality left, she would have already cursed. However, she knew that her good days were tied to these people in front of her. She couldn't let them have a bad impression of her. Otherwise, there would be more blame in the future. Old madam, right at this moment, Mammy Qin smiled and opened the warm curtain in front of the door. She replied, "Eldest master has returned." As soon as her voice fell, Qin Huayuan entered the door wearing a cotton-padded cloak with a gray mouse fur collar. She casually handed the cloak to Mammy Qin and came forward to greet old madam. "Mother. You're back. Quickly sit down." Old madam had a smile on her face. Qin Huayuan sat down on a round chair with a thick cushion. The Sun clan, second madam, and third madam naturally retreated to the side. Seeing that the room was filled with a joyous atmosphere, Qin Huayuan asked with a smile, "What good thing happened that I don't know about?" "Mother, please tell me about it." Old madam smiled and said, "Isn't it Sister Yi's good news? Today, she went back to Duke Dinghua's estate. In order to celebrate her return, her grandmother gave her the Zhaoyun agency. We were just talking about it." When Qin Huayuan heard this, he was stunned. In a breath, he had already grasped the crux of the matter. He couldn't help but sigh softly and look at Qin Yining. As a father, he naturally liked children who were similar to him. Qin Huayuan was no exception. However, it was a pity that no matter how hard he worked over the years and how many prescriptions he secretly used, he still couldn't make his wife give birth to a son. She was just a girl. Even if she looked like him, what was the use? It could only be a marriage alliance. When he looked at Qin Yining's delicate appearance, Qin Huayuan felt even more regretful. There was a voice in his heart that screamed, "Why isn't this a son?" There were some words that he couldn't be bothered to say. She was just a little girl. No matter how big the Tang family's matter was, what could she do? Getting the Zhaoyun agency was just a bonus. This time, the Tang family's matter involved Prince Ning and Qing Lu. If they couldn't handle it after the matter, at most the head shopkeeper would take the blame. The Zhaoyun agency had already changed owners. It was natural to change the head shopkeeper. When Qin Huayuan thought about this, he didn't say much. He only said, "Father-in-law and mother-in-law have troubled themselves. I will definitely come to thank you another day." When the Sun clan heard this, their hearts were indescribably warm. When they looked at Qin Huayuan, their gazes softened. When the old madam saw that the Sun clan, Qin Yining, and Qin Huaining were still dressed for going out, she told them to go back and rest. There was no need for them to come over today. The three of them bowed. Qin Huaining forced a smile and said goodbye to the Sun clan. He returned to the warm room to rest for the time being. On the other hand, Qin Yining, Ruelan, Nurse Jean, and Kai Ju followed the small sedan chair to send the Sun clan back to Xingning Garden. After bowing, they returned to their own snow pear courtyard. In such a short time, the news that Qin Yining had become the owner of the Zhaoyun agency had spread like wildfire. Along the way, all the servants they met took the initiative to come forward and greet them politely. Ruelan carried a lamp and followed Qin Yining. She carefully recalled what had happened after Qin Yining returned to the Fu. 5 days ago, when the young lady had just returned to the Fu, the old madam and her birth mother didn't recognize her. Qin Huining bullied her. She even had to look at the servants' faces for food and necessities. But now, the old madam didn't hate her. Furen seemed to like her. There was no need to mention how Duke Ding's Fu treated her. She didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Her display of power not only shocked the servants, but also shocked the master, Qin Huining. Ruelan, who was in the carriage, heard clearly what he said when he lectured her. The most important thing was that all the young ladies in the Fu were still living on 2 taels a month, but her young lady already had a mountain of gold. Thinking of this, Ruelan was so excited that her blood was boiling. She was even more determined to follow Qin Yining in the future. In the past, she was a frog at the bottom of the well. She only knew that Xingning Garden was so small. She thought that the best future was to be the master. Now that she followed the young lady, although the future was unknown, it was obviously more promising than following Furen. Of course, Qin Yining didn't know what Ruelan was thinking. She just felt that everyone was suddenly more polite to her and Ruelan was more attentive to her service. She couldn't help but find it funny. Was it human nature to step on those who were higher up? Turning into the alley, she saw a figure standing at the door of Snow Pear Courtyard in the distance, craning her neck to look outside. Seeing them, the person hurried to greet them. When she got closer, Qin Yining saw that it was Qiu Lu who ran over. "Young lady." Qiu Lu deliberately lowered her voice and said nervously, "Just now, a Master Zhong came with 2 big camphor wood boxes. He said that he was here to deliver the account books of Zhaoyun Agency to you. But after he came, he refused to drink tea or leave. He even knelt in the yard and refused to leave." Qin Yining blinked in surprise, and then asked in a slightly anxious voice, "How long has he been here? How many people knew when he came? Did anyone know that he was kneeling? When he came in through the back door. Not many people knew. When others saw him come in with the boxes, they thought he was delivering things to you and didn't pay attention to when he left. As for kneeling." Qiu Lu thought for a while and said, "It's been more than 2 hours. I was afraid it would be bad if it spread, so I discussed with Zhu Mama and Zhan Mama to discipline all the servants in Snow Pear Courtyard. They are not allowed to leave the courtyard. Today, Zhu Mama and I were the ones who carried the boxes." Qin Yining breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "You did well." She knew that Qiu Lu thought things through, but she had a slow personality. She didn't expect her to be so steady in such an emergency. It seemed that Qiu Lu could be used in the future. The master and servants returned to Snow Pear Courtyard. As expected, they saw a person kneeling at the end of the pebbled path in the courtyard. Winter was about to begin, and it was evening. The cold wind blew, causing the lanterns in the corridor to flicker and flicker. The wind blew yellow bamboo leaves all over the ground. The figure kneeling upright looked extremely desolate. Qiu Lu saw that Qin Yining stopped and looked at her questioningly. Qin Yining thought for a while and said, "This is Master Zhong, right? You want to hand over the account books to me? Please come in and talk." He didn't even look at Innkeeper Zhong as he said this. Instead, he went straight into the reception hall. Ruelan and Qiu Lu hurried to invite Shopkeeper Zhong. "Shopkeeper, our young lady is back. Please get up. If you go on like this, it will be difficult for our young lady." Chapter 33. Qin Yining sat at the head of the table. Ruelan and Qiu Lu stood to her left and right. She was silent and didn't immediately respond. Instead, she carefully examined shopkeeper Zhong. Zhong Yuqing was close to 60 years old. He was of medium height and was slightly plump. He wore a sapphire blue brocade gown with a pattern of fortune and a dark brown cotton cloak. He wore a warm hat on his head. In the middle of the hat was a sapphire the size of a fingernail. Just by looking at his attire, she could tell that he was a very respectable person. But right now, his face was miserable. His wrinkles were filled with the word worry. His white goatee trembled. When he saluted Qin Yining, he bowed very low as if he couldn't bear the weight. Qin Yining quickly calculated in her mind. A shopkeeper like shopkeeper Zhong was much more respectable than any shopkeeper she had seen when she was selling herbs outside. In the past, she should be the one nodding and bowing to others. But now, this shopkeeper was kneeling in front of her. She couldn't find a way to deal with it for a while. However, she was the new owner of Zhao Yun Agency. Although she could rely on the head shopkeeper for business matters, she still had to make some decisions. How to convince the public in the future all depended on today. Qin Yining thought of this. Her back straightened and her aura became stronger. Silence had always been the most profound response. Shopkeeper Zhong saw that the new owner was a young girl but could keep her composure. Thinking of the powerful Duchess Ding, he didn't dare to slight her and lowered his head even more. Ruelan and Qiu Lu couldn't help but admire their young lady. No other young lady had such grace and aura. The silence lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Then Qin Yining slowly spoke. Because she had to think, she spoke very slowly. But when she spoke, each word seemed to carry more weight. Master Zhong, did you come specially today for something important? Please stand up and respond. Ruelan, take a seat. Qiu Lu, bring good tea. Ruelan and Qiu Lu did as they were told. Shopkeeper Zhong stood up, bowed, and stepped back. He only sat down on one side of the table that Ruelan brought over. Then, he took over the white porcelain red plum tea bowl that Qiu Lu brought over with both hands and put it on the short table beside him. Qin Yining played with the lid of the teacup in his hand and said, "There are no outsiders here. If shopkeeper Zhong has something to say, please speak your mind. However, if you have any problems in the future, feel free to come and tell me directly. But if you continue to kneel like this in the middle of winter and don't get up, what will you do if you hurt your body? I still have to rely on you for my future business." Shopkeeper Zhong was a smart man. Hearing this, he immediately understood that Qin Yining was blaming him for possibly ruining the girl's reputation. He hurriedly got up and bowed, "Boss is right. This lowly one was reckless this time. I won't do it again in the future. It's just that today's matter is urgent, so I came here rashly." While speaking, he quickly looked up at Qin Yining. He saw that the girl sitting at the head of the table was wearing a gorilla red cloak. Under the light, her face was so beautiful that it was hard to describe. A pair of slender long eyebrows outlined a bit of heroism, which made her eyes bright and deep. She could be called an unfathomable figure. Shopkeeper Zhong was shocked and hurriedly said, "Boss, something happened to the Zhao Yun Agency. I can't deal with it, so I come to ask for your advice." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. Although he had a hunch that even if he got the Zhao Yun Agency, he would not get the bonus for free. However, when it happened, he still felt unprepared. Qin Yining was flustered, but he looked calm. He just raised his chin and motioned for shopkeeper Zhong to continue. Shopkeeper Zhong said, "A few days ago, we rented a girl from the musical house. She was 14 years old and looked like a flower bud. Who would have thought that just one day after she arrived at the restaurant, Prince Ning broke in and snatched her away without saying a word. It's not that I don't have any bodyguard boxing masters. Our Zhao Yun Agency will not be bullied for no reason. But Prince Ning is powerful, so I really don't dare to offend him. Now this girl has been in Prince Ning's mansion for 3 days. The rented person was lost. I really can't explain it to the steward of the musical house, so I come to ask you to help me. There was a moment of silence in the room. It was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Ruelan and Qiu Lu were listening on the side. In an instant, they were so scared that cold sweat came out. Who didn't know who Prince Ning was in the Dian? Prince Ning, Yuqi Jinming, advocated force. He was good at leading troops in war. As the emperor's brother, he was favored by the emperor. The emperor had few children, and he once adopted Prince Ning's son as a prince. Although the emperor later had a prince, he gave the prince back to Prince Ning. After all, the status of Prince Ning's mansion was not ordinary. However, no matter how good Prince Ning was, he was a licentious and tyrannical person. If he liked a girl or a young wife, he would directly take her away. How could a girl in the boudoir like Qin Yining deal with this kind of thing? Just when Ruelan and Qiu Lu were complaining about the injustice and sweating for their master, they heard a clear laughter. Qin Yining said with a smile, "Shopkeeper Zhong is a wonderful person. This is the first time I've seen you beg someone like this. Since you don't want to tell the truth, please do as you please." As she spoke, she picked up a cup of tea. "Serve tea to see the guest out." The maidservants were stunned. It was Ruelan who reacted first and asked Shopkeeper Zhong to leave. Shopkeeper Zhong was stunned and looked at the girl in the first seat in astonishment. He saw Qin Yining was calm and graceful, with a gentle smile, as if he wouldn't be shaken even if the wind and rain fell on him. Shopkeeper Zhong immediately put away his disdain and didn't dare to belittle her as a little girl. He knelt down with a thud. "Boss, please don't be angry." Qin Yining said, "Shopkeeper Zhong, since you're here to beg me, don't try to deceive me. You rented people from the musical house. I don't believe that you haven't lost your face like this before. How did you deal with it at that time? Now, since you can't deal with it well, it must be unusual. You'd better tell me the truth. I'll listen to it and maybe I can help you think of a way." Shopkeeper Zhong knelt on the ground and kowtowed, "Boss, you're wise." The girl who was taken away by Prince Ning was surnamed Tang and her name was Mang. She was the only daughter of the former Imperial Hospital's chief Tang. Imperial Hospital's chief Tang was sentenced to be executed because he poisoned the Empress. The women of the Tang family didn't want to be humiliated, so they all killed themselves. This Miss Tang escaped because she became a nun half a year ago. Later, when the incident happened, she was taken to the musical house and then rented back. Qin Yining understood the latter part of Shopkeeper Zhong's words even if he didn't say it. She was born among the common people, so she knew more than the nobles in the capital city. The emperor was muddle-headed and incompetent. He was almost 70 years old, but he only favored the Empress Chao, who was in her early 20s. Chao was born in a famous family. Her father was the Crown Prince's imperial preceptor, Chao Bingzhong. Imperial preceptor Chao's daughter was the Empress, and his disciple was the Crown Prince. He was in the limelight in the imperial court, so he acted even more arrogantly. As for the Empress Chao, it was said that she was devastatingly beautiful and seductive. Not only was she doted on, but she also frequently interfered with the imperial court. She was no different from Daji, Baosi, Fian, and Heda in history. The common people didn't call Chao the Empress, but the Demon Empress. Everyone said that the reason the emperor was so muddle-headed was because of the Demon Empress. Qin Yining also heard about the Tang family on his way back to the capital city. It was said that a certain imperial physician was on good terms with the civil officials in the capital city. He hoped to clean up the emperor and eliminate the Demon Empress. In the Dian dynasty, he used his position to poison the Demon Empress. He didn't expect the Demon Empress to be so tough. She was only half dead from the poison, but the entire family of the imperial physician lost their lives. After hearing shopkeeper Zhong's words, Qin Yining understood the origin of this Miss Tang Meng. Today, shopkeeper Zhong came as if his ass was on fire. Qin Yining was confused at first, but now she understood why he was so humble. Tang Meng's father was the hero who killed the demon empress with poison. Tang Meng was the hero's orphan. She was brought back by the Zhaoyun Bureau, but they didn't protect her well. She was taken away by the perverted Ning Wang for 3 days. Everyone could guess what would happen in these 3 days. Presumably, the old antiques in the capital city must have tortured shopkeeper Zhong a lot in these 3 days. Those officials couldn't deal with Imperial Tutor Chao and Ning Wang, but they were more than enough to deal with a small shopkeeper. Shopkeeper Zhong also had a son and nephew. If this matter wasn't handled well, shopkeeper Zhong's family wouldn't have a foothold in the capital city. They might even lose their lives. No wonder shopkeeper Zhong is so anxious. Qin Yining frowned and said, "I understand what you said. You can go back." He didn't say anything. Shopkeeper Zhong said anxiously, "Boss, please show this lowly one the way. This lowly one's family will definitely be deeply grateful. We will be loyal to boss for the rest of our lives." Shopkeeper Zhong. Qin Yining said calmly, "What do you think I can do?" This sentence was like a bucket of cold water poured over his head. Yes, the original boss was a great talent like Sun Yu, but he didn't take on this hot potato. Now the boss was just a girl in the boudoir. What could she do? He was really turning to any doctor in his desperation. Shopkeeper Zhong hung his head in despair. He could already foresee the future of his family. Maybe he would lose his life in a few days. Qin Yining brought the tea again. This time, shopkeeper Zhong bowed politely and Ruelan saw him out. Qin Yining slowly put down the teacup. Her indifferent expression was gone. She frowned and pursed her red lips. She felt like there was a big stone pressing down on her heart. She first paced back and forth in the room. She felt that the room was suffocating, so she walked to the courtyard. Under the dim sky, the bamboo forest in the small courtyard rustled and the shadows of the trees were dense. It was as if this was the only place left between heaven and earth. The anger in her heart was stirred up by a sense of justice. Bastard! Qin Yining was so angry that she couldn't help but curse. She fiercely kicked the stone stool, causing it to tilt and fall to the ground, making a muffled bang sound. Ruelan and Qiu Lu were shocked. Mama Zhu hid in the room and didn't dare to come out. Mama Jean stood in the corridor of the side room and quietly watched Qin Yining. Ruelan supported Qin Yining. "Miss, don't be angry. Take care of yourself." Chapter 34. How could Qin Yining not know that the Tang family's fate was pitiful? But she was just a woman in her boudoir. Her biggest support was her father. She wanted to ask Qin Huayuan for help, but no matter how stupid she was, she knew that Qin Huayuan must have known about this matter a long time ago. He already knew, but he didn't do anything. This already explained his position. Zhaoyun Agency was originally Sun Yu's property. How could Sun Yu not know about this matter? Sun Yu and Duchess Ding both decided to ignore this matter. How could she intervene? Qin Yining thought quickly. If she didn't ask about this matter, what would it turn out to be? Seeing Qin Yining's bad expression, Qiu Lu realized that she had said something wrong. She didn't dare to say anything more. Seeing that Qin Yining had quieted down, Mama Jean returned to her room. Only Qin Yining, Ruelan, and Qiu Lu were left in the courtyard. Qin Yining looked at the side rooms and the back seats. After confirming that there was no one else, she suppressed her anger and said in a low voice, "This matter needs to be discussed at length." Ruilan could tell from Qin Yining's words that something was wrong. She said anxiously, "Miss, this matter involves Prince Ning. What can a woman in her boudoir like you do? You should just ignore it." Qiao Lu also bit her lip and knelt down, saying, "Miss, this servant spoke without thinking. It's not suitable for you to intervene in this matter. Please don't be affected by this servant." Qin Yining shook her head and helped Qiao Lu stand up. Her gaze was firm and bright as she said, "It's fine if I didn't know. But now that I know, I can't not try. I'm not sure I can save them. But if I don't even dare to try, I'm afraid I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. Miss, it's better to avoid trouble. You, Ruilan, I was picked up by my foster mother by a stream. If she had the mindset of, the less trouble the better, and refused to adopt me because she was afraid of getting involved in trouble, I'm afraid I would have died a long time ago. How would I be able to stand here and talk to you?" Qin Yining's eyes were very bright, as if they were filled with stars. "Although I've been living a hard life all these years, I've never dared to forget what my foster mother taught me. As a human being, there are always some moral principles that cannot be abandoned. If this matter were to continue, Miss Tang's life would be ruined. Secondly, I'm afraid that shopkeeper Zhong's family will suffer the crazy revenge of Qingliu's group." At this point, Qin Yining sneered, "Qinglu and those people didn't dare to look for Prince Ning or the boss of Zhaoyun Agency, so they could only vent their anger on the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper Zhong didn't do anything wrong, and his family is innocent. Tell me, this matter involves the rest of a young lady's life, and it also involves the lives of an innocent family. How can I pretend that I don't know? But young lady, what can you do?" Ruilan was moved by Qin Yining's words, but at the same time, she was worried about her master. Qin Yining shook her head, "I can't ask my father for help. I can only do my best and leave it to fate. Even if I can't save them, at least I've tried my best." Qiao Lu was inspired by Qin Yining's decision and her words. She nodded heavily, "Young lady, please tell me what you want me to do." Qin Yining chuckled, and her white teeth looked as beautiful as white porcelain in the night. "Just do your job well. You can't do anything else." Ruilan was a little worried, "Young lady, no matter what you want to do, if the Prime Minister and old Madam find out, they won't let it go. It will be very bad for you. It hasn't been easy for you to get to where you are now after coming back to the mansion. You should think twice before you act." Qin Yining knew that Ruilan was cautious and that she was worried about her, so she smiled gratefully. "So what if it's the worst? Even if my bones are broken, I'm still my father's daughter. I've lived through the worst days. They won't beat me to death in front of me because they care about their reputation, right? If not, I'll just go back to chopping firewood and gathering herbs to be a savage." Her self-joking tone was very carefree, and the two maidservants were full of pride and enthusiasm. But at this time, a deep male voice suddenly entered their ears. "Well said." Qin Yining was startled and quickly pulled the two maidservants back. But because of her reputation, she didn't dare to say anything before the situation was settled. She only lowered her voice and reprimanded, "Who is it?" The dignified young man on the roof silently covered his face. "Wang Yi, why couldn't you control yourself and make a sound?" The young man next to him was also stunned for a moment. These two people were little Wang Yi, Pang Xiao, and his bodyguard, Huzi, who were regarded as evil stars by Dian's officials and common people, who were visiting the Prime Minister's mansion tonight. Pang Xiao was only stunned for a moment before he jumped into the courtyard and stood in front of Qin Yining without any concealment. Huzi was startled by his master's actions. Before he could react, Pang Xiao's hand shot out like lightning and grabbed Qin Yining's face. The master and servants cried out in alarm. Qin Yining was so scared that she closed her eyes. She felt the weight on her head loosen, and a lock of her long hair suddenly fell down and draped over her shoulder. Then, her cheek was touched by a large, rough hand. The hand was dry and warm, and there were rough calluses on the fingers and palm. It scraped her cheek until it hurt slightly. Was she being molested? Chin Yining cried out in alarm and instinctively hit back. Who knew that she would hit empty air? When she looked again, the man's figure was no longer in front of her. She could only see a tall figure flipping over the wall. She could even hear that person's deep and pleasant laughter. The courtyard was still silent. The bright moon hung high in the sky, the palace lantern swayed, and the shadows of the bamboos danced. Everything just now seemed like an illusion. "Miss, what's wrong?" Nanny Jean, Nanny Zhu, Luya, and the rest heard the commotion and ran out with lanterns. When they saw Chin Yining and the two servants standing in the courtyard in a daze, they couldn't help but worry and went forward. "Miss, what's wrong? Did you sprain your ankle?" Chin Yining shook his head in shock. No, it's just that I almost fell and got a fright." Ruelan and Qiu Lu immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. A perverted thief had barged into the residence and even touched the Mississippi. If news of this spread, how would the miss be able to face others? Both of them insisted that it was Chin Yining who almost fell. Nanny Zhu heaved a sigh of relief. "It's good that you're fine. Miss, it's cold outside. You should go back into the house." Nanny Jean didn't suspect anything and also said, "Miss, if you want to get some fresh air, you should take a walk in the sun during the day. Don't catch a cold now." A group of people clustered around Chin Yining and returned to the main house. At this time, outside the courtyard, Huzi was looking at his Wang Yi with a shocked expression. In his impression, his Wang Yi had always been strict and stern when dealing with people. His gaze was too sharp and he treated people very coldly. He was also very cautious and did things openly. When it was time to be unreasonable, he would be unreasonable, and when it was time to be cold, he would be cold. However, most of the time, he was very calm and self-controlled. However, what happened tonight completely shattered Huzi's understanding of his master. Wang Yi was holding a hairpin, right? He also seemed to have seen Wang Yi touch the miss's face. His unruly, domineering, and murderous Wang Yi actually jumped into a miss's courtyard in the middle of the night and snatched a hairpin. He even acted like a hooligan while he was at it. If he wasn't blind, then the world must be hallucinating. Pang Xiao looked at the hairpin in his hand with a wooden expression. The hairpin was made of jasper, and 3 flower buds surrounded a blooming begonia flower. It was small and exquisite. The girl's hair was black and shiny, and the hairpin shone brightly in her hair. What was even brighter was her bright eyes and shining teeth when she smiled. He didn't know what was wrong with him. The hand that was holding the hairpin still seemed to be burning. Her face was so smooth. The way she closed her eyes when she was frightened was so cute. And those small and moist lips, what the hell? Pang Xiao tucked the hairpin into his bosom and kept it close to his body. With a dark face, he strode forward as fast as the wind. Huzi hurriedly chased after him. "Wang Yi, the horses are ready. When are we leaving?" "Tonight." "That's good too. Old Madam and Old Madam have been invited to the palace by the Emperor. To prevent any changes, we have to hurry back to Xihua." "Yes. Wang Yi, you've taken a fancy to Miss Qin, haven't you?" "Wang Yi, quiet, let's hurry." "Yes." At this moment, Chin Yining was staring blankly at the bean-sized light from the canopy. Who was that person just now? Her hairpin had been snatched away. If that person had bad intentions and used it to accuse her of having an affair with another man, her reputation would be completely ruined. She had even been touched on the face. Until now, she still felt her face burning. She could even feel the calluses on that person's palm rubbing against her face. That person should be someone who did manual labor or held a weapon all year round, right? Actually, she did not see the man's face clearly because the man's back was facing the light. She could only see his tall and thin figure clearly. She was only as tall as the man's shoulder. If the man wanted to kill her, he could have broken her neck with one hand. However, she didn't feel any murderous intent or hostility. She hunted all year round, so she was very sensitive to hostility and murderous intent. If that person had the slightest intention of harming her, she would have felt it as soon as he stared at her maliciously. Then why did that person suddenly appear in her courtyard? How much did that person hear of what she said? Would things develop in a direction that she couldn't control? Qin Yining felt her heart was in a mess. She turned over in annoyance. Ruilan, who was on night duty outside the canopy, heard the noise and hurriedly put on her clothes. "Miss, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Qin Yining sighed and said, "Today's matter must not be spread. This servant understands. I definitely won't speak carelessly." Qin Yining closed her eyes. Sleep. No matter what, she still had to live her life. The next morning, Qin Yining went to greet the Sun clan and the old madam as usual. Then she returned to the old madam. "Today, I'm going to take a look at the shops under Zhao Yun Agency. I've agreed with Master Zhong that I'm going to check the accounts." The old madam only told her to bring a few more people and agreed. Qin Yining went back to the courtyard to dress up. Then she left with Qiu Lu and Ruilan in a carriage. They passed through the Yi Gate, circled around a large man-made lake, passed through rockery, and arrived at a courtyard. Entering the main hall, a horizontal board hung high in the middle of the room. The words, "Benevolence," were written on it. Below the horizontal board was a painting of the 8 horses. Looking down, there was a long table made of yellow rosewood. On the table, there was a glazed flower vase on the left and right. There were fresh flowers in the vase. In the center, there was a carved brass incense burner burning with an unknown incense. It smelled faintly of pine oil and sandalwood. The young man was the first to step across the shiny black marble floor. He directly sat at the head of the table and said with a smile, "Miss, please sit." Seeing him sit in such a relaxed manner, Qin Yining was even more certain of her guess. After smiling and thanking him, she took off her veiled hat and sat down. Ruilan, Qiu Lu, and Master Zhong all stood behind Qin Yining with their heads lowered. When the young man saw Qin Yining's true appearance, he was stunned at first. He immediately lowered his eyes and coughed softly. He said, "Miss, are you the precious daughter that Prime Minister Qin just found?" "Yes, I am." Qin Yining was somewhat nervous. She was afraid that the young man would ask her the purpose of her visit. After all, it was one thing to discuss the matter of Prince Ning snatching someone in person, but it was easy to be misunderstood as making up Prince Ning's mistakes if she talked about it behind his back. As a result, Qin Yining deliberately didn't look at the young man. She raised her eyes to look at the calligraphy hanging in front of her, and then looked at the painting of the 8 horses hanging above the head of the table. The painting depicted 8 majestic wild horses galloping across a grassland. There was no signature or seal. The young man couldn't help but want to look at Qin Yining's face. Seeing that she seemed to be interested in the painting of the 8 horses, he asked with a smile, "Miss, what do you think of this painting?" Qin Yining was stumped. She didn't know much about painting, so she could only laugh dryly and say, "It's very well painted." The young man originally thought that she was knowledgeable about painting. He didn't expect to hear such a dry sentence. He was a bit surprised. When Qin Yining saw the young man's expression, she also felt that her words were too insincere. She coughed and said, "The painting of the horses is very lively." However, I am certain that the person who painted this painting has never seen a group of horses before. The young man was very surprised. He stood up and looked at the painting with his hands behind his back. He then asked Qin Yining curiously, "Why do you say that? I don't think there is anything wrong with this painting." When Qin Yining saw that the young man was so serious, she blinked doubtfully and said softly, "I grew up in the mountains. I was once saved by a group of wild horses like this. Therefore, I have some understanding of what a group of horses looks like." He had heard that Prime Minister Qin's biological daughter had been swapped away and had led a wandering life for 14 years. At this moment, the young man was completely interested in Qin Yining. He continued to ask, "If Miss doesn't mind, please tell me in detail. What does a group of wild horses look like?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "That year, I was attacked by wild wolves. I panicked and ran out of the forest. I saw a group of wild horses eating grass in a large grassland. Because no one could save me, I was too scared. Therefore, I didn't think much and directly rushed towards the group of horses. At that time, it was a leading horse that saved me." Recalling the past, Qin Yining seemed to be able to see the handsome red wild horse. Her smile gradually widened. The leading horse of the group of horses, just like the one running in the middle of the painting, was bigger than the other horses. Its mane was very long and it was very strong. The leading horse was handsome and brave. In times of danger, it could protect the group of horses. It could even fight against the wild wolves. At that time, it was because I rushed towards the group of horses and attracted the wild wolves. The leading horse went berserk and chased the wolves away. That was how I survived." Speaking of this, Qin Yining stood up and walked 3 steps behind the young man. She looked up at the painting of the 8 horses. The horses in this painting are handsome and the painting is very vivid. However, perhaps the painter wanted to highlight the leading horse's handsomeness, so he painted it in the middle. You should know that in a group of wild horses, the leading horse is the leader. This is completely wrong. That's why I said that the painter must have never seen a real group of wild horses. The young man nodded repeatedly. He turned around and looked at Qin Yining with a burning gaze. His gaze fell on her bright eyes, but he quickly looked away. His ears turned red. "Miss, I didn't know you had such a rich experience. I've learned a lot this time." Qin Yining quickly shook her head. "Young master, you're exaggerating. I really don't know much about painting and calligraphy. I can only see that this painting is good. The rest is just nonsense. I hope young master can forgive me." "Miss, what are you saying?" Just as the two of them were exchanging pleasantries, they heard someone say, "Wang Yi is here." Then, there was the sound of footsteps. Looking in the direction of the sound, they saw a man in his 50s walk out from the back hall. This man was very tall. He wore a dark purple brocade robe and a purple gold crown on his head. He had a full beard, so it was impossible to see his face clearly. As he walked with a majestic gait. In his arms was an enchanting woman wearing a light green muslin dress. When Prince Ning walked into the front hall, his eyes lit up when he saw Qin Yining. Then, he saw the young man next to her. He laughed heartily and cupped his hands. The young man returned the greeting and said, "Miss, you still have things to talk about with Wang Yi. I won't disturb you." After he said that, he politely bowed and walked to the back of the hall. Chapter 36. As soon as they saw Prince Ning, Ruelan and Qiu Lu, the 2 maidservants who had never seen such a big scene, were so scared that their backs were sweating. Even Master Zhong, who was experienced and knowledgeable, was so scared that he couldn't raise his head. Prince Ning had a reputation for being tyrannical and licentious. Because he led troops to war, he had a vicious aura around him. His voice was low and loud, and his words made people's hearts tremble. Whether it was the pressure of his status or his strength, ordinary people didn't dare to look at him directly. At this time, Prince Ning knew that he was going to meet a woman in her boudoir, but he still held a beautiful concubine in his arms. His restless hands rubbed the woman's waist and chest, causing the woman to laugh coquettishly and unrestrainedly. His irreverent attitude was self-evident. Facing this kind of Prince Ning, any young lady would be embarrassed and afraid, retreating like the plague. Even men would feel humiliated. But Qin Yining didn't move. As if he couldn't see what Prince Ning was doing, he bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Prince Ning. I'm from the Qin clan, the only daughter of Prime Minister Qin. I took over the business of Zhao Yun Agency a few days ago. As the new owner of Zhao Yun Agency, I came to see Prince Ning about Miss Tang." "You're quite bold." Prince Ning snorted. "I thought that Qin Meng raised an interesting daughter who admires this king's strength and came to see you." As soon as he said this, the beautiful concubine in Prince Ning's arms giggled. Qiu Lu and Ruelan were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. They lowered their heads and didn't know what to do. Master Zhong broke out in cold sweat. He began to regret asking Qin Yining to come and ask for help. He actually wanted a lady in her boudoir to be humiliated in front of Prince Ning. Qin Yining didn't even frown. He just pretended that he didn't hear Prince Ning's words. He said, "Prince Ning is indeed powerful and famous. I grew up in the countryside and often heard people talk about Prince Ning's heroic achievements in leading the army to resist Zhou. It's really admirable." Ning Wang did not expect that not only this girl was not frightened by him, she even flattered him. He could not help but find it amusing. Although he had a beautiful concubine in his arms, he leaned forward and laughed aloud. "Well said. This king couldn't bear to see Zhou usurping the throne like a bunch of rascals. In the name of overthrowing tyranny, they're actually doing shameful things." Qin Yining also smiled. Ruelan, Qiu Lu, and Manager Zhong all let out a sigh of relief. Just when everyone thought that Qin Yining would continue to flatter Prince Ning, Qin Yining changed the topic and said, "But Prince Ning, do you know that if Miss Tang continues to be in your hands, your reputation will be ruined?" The slightly relaxed atmosphere became tense again because of this sentence. King Ning's thick eyebrows were tightly knitted, and the beard on his face seemed to be trembling because of anger. He roared with a rough male voice, "How dare you!" Manager Zhong was so frightened that his body trembled and he broke out in a cold sweat. The two maidservants' legs went soft and they directly knelt down. Qin Yining chuckled and said, "If I didn't have the courage, I wouldn't have dared to come to Wang Ye's place today. Wang Yi is wise and powerful, so he naturally has a good understanding of the current situation in Dian. Saying that Dian is invincible is pure boasting. I once struggled to survive in the border city of Liang and the surrounding big cities, so I naturally know that 9 out of 10 houses are empty and starving people are everywhere. The high officials and nobles in the capital are like frogs at the bottom of a well who don't know the hardships of the outside world. But with Wang Ye's experience and wit, how could he not see that in Dian, there will be a day when the city will be breached?" These words directly made Master Zhong's body go soft and he directly knelt down. Ning Wang's face darkened and he angrily glared at Qin Yining. "You woman, how dare you? You actually dare to curse me in Dian. Do you believe that this king can tear you to pieces at any time without informing your father?" Qin Yining's heart trembled when she saw Ning Wang's rage. But things had already come to this point, and the arrow had already been knocked on the bow. She curtsied and said, "The reason Wang Yi is angry is because I'm speaking the truth. Moreover, I'm not saying this to slander Dian. If there really is a day when the country is breached, although I'm a woman, I won't be greedy for life and afraid of death. What I'm saying today is all for Wang Ye's sake. Qin Yining's eyes sparkled like stars. Wang Yi knows in his heart that in the future, there will be a day when the soldiers will arrive at the city gates. Since ancient times, whenever a monarch does something wrong, there will always be a devilish woman by his side. Daji, Taizhen, and the like might end up like the Empress in the future. Today, Director Tang is a criminal who attempted to murder the Empress, but in the future, there will be a day when he will be a hero who dies to eliminate the demon Empress. When that day comes, it will probably be a completely different world. When that time comes, what will Your Highness Ning Wang do? After Qin Yining said this, she lowered her head and didn't say anything else. She had already said everything she wanted to say. Now it was up to Ning Wang to decide. Whether it would succeed or not, she had already done her best. At this time, Ning Wang had already repeated Qin Yining's words over and over in his mind. In reality, the meaning of Qin Yining's words was very clear. In the future, if there really was a day when the soldiers of Dezhou arrived at the city gates, with the emperor's muddle-headedness and cowardice, he would definitely push out a scapegoat who would bring disaster to the country and its people. The Empress, who had mesmerized him in the past, would be the first choice. Once the Empress was pushed out, there was no doubt that she would die. The Chao family would become criminals and would never be able to rise again. Moreover, if there really was such a day, perhaps the Dian would no longer exist. Just as Qin Yining had said, when the time came, the world would be turned upside down, and there would be a new world. As a member of the imperial family, if Ning Wang wanted to live peacefully in the world, it wouldn't be as easy as it was now. If he still kept the daughter of the Tang family by his side, those tigers and wolves in Qinglu couldn't touch him now, but what about in the future? Ning Wang had always understood this. What he didn't expect was that a woman in the boudoir could not only think so far ahead, but also had enough courage to say such rebellious words in front of him. Moreover, she didn't do it for herself, but to save people. It seemed that this woman wasn't a vase with an empty appearance. She was an intelligent and chivalrous woman with a hidden beauty. When Ning Wang looked at Qin Yining, admiration flashed through his eyes. Ning Wang didn't say anything, which made everyone in the room nervous. There was a thin layer of sweat in Qin Yining's palms. She could feel that Ning Wang had been using his knife-like eyes to cut her body, as if he wanted to peel off a layer of her skin. It wasn't that she wasn't afraid, but since she had decided to save people, she couldn't back down. After a while, Ning Wang said coldly, "Miss Tang is indeed in this king's hands. If you want to take her back, what are you going to do with her? Send her back to the musical house." Qin Yining was delighted. Since Ning Wang said so, there was hope. She thought for a while and said, "This thing has become so big that I don't plan to send Miss Tang back to the musical house. If Wang Yi really gives her to me, I want to take her with me and make her my maidservant. As for how to explain it to the musical house, I think they won't dare to do anything with Wang Ye's deterrence, as long as Wang Yi is willing to give her to me. If she was outside, she would inevitably be targeted by Grand Preceptor Chao's people. Even if she was rescued now, she would lose her life in the future. Anyway, she was the daughter of the Prime Minister, so those people would have scruples about her." Hearing this, Ning Wang laughed loudly. His laughter shook the dust on the beam and almost made it fall down. He patted the beautiful concubine's perky butt in his arms. The beautiful concubine understood. She glanced at Ning Wang coquettishly and walked into the back hall, swaying her slender waist. Not long after, she heard a series of footsteps coming from afar. She looked up and saw two maidservants accompanying a little Taoist nun around the floor-to-ceiling window. The little Taoist nun was petite with a pair of round eyes on her apple-shaped face. She was very cute. Her loose Taoist robe hung loosely on her body, making her look like a child who had stolen an adult's clothes. Seeing the little Taoist nun, Ning Wang said with a smile, "Sister Meng, did you hear what they said just now?" The little Taoist nun turned to Qin Yining and smiled sweetly. The two cute dimples on her cheeks were very obvious. "I heard everything. Thank you for your kindness, sister." Ning Wang said, "Then are you willing to be this sister's maidservant?" The little Taoist nun nodded. "Sister Qin is very warm-hearted. I'm all alone now, so I can't be the young miss I used to be. Naturally, I've accepted reality. Since I can't go back to the Taoist temple or the school, I'm willing to follow Sister Qin and treat her as my master. I'll serve her loyally for the rest of my life to repay Sister Qin's kindness for saving me today." Ning Wang nodded. His voice was so gentle that it seemed like he was a different person. "Miss Qin, this is the daughter of Grand Preceptor Tang, Miss Tang Meng. This king sees your sincerity, courage, and intelligence. He thinks you'll be able to protect her well. This king is relieved to hand her over to you." He smiled warmly at the little Taoist nun. The little Taoist nun, who was Tang Meng, smiled back. She knelt down properly and bowed to Ning Wang. "Sister Meng thanks Wang Yi for protecting me these days. I can't repay you for taking the blame for me." Ning Wang smiled. "This king is indebted to your father. This king only did a small favor. Besides, even if it weren't for you, how could this king's reputation be any less? You may leave." He waved his hand. Tang Meng stood up and walked to Qin Yining's side with a smile. She bowed and said respectfully, "Mississippi." Qin Yining, Master Zhong, Ruelan, and Qiu Lu were all stunned. Things had changed so quickly that they couldn't react in time. In Qin Yining's imagination, it should be a great beauty in distress who was caught and ravaged by Prince Ning in his mansion. Qin Yining and Tang Meng were the same age. Qin Yining was born like this, so he assumed that Tang Meng was the same. He didn't expect that the real Tang Meng was such a lovely little girl. She looked completely different from the great beauty in distress in his imagination. And the ravaging she thought was even more ridiculous. Wang Yi wasn't a pedophile, and it sounded like he used to be friends with Grand Preceptor Tang. Yes, it was inappropriate to keep Tang Meng in the musical house or the Zhaoyun agency. There were too many people outside. If Grand Preceptor Chao hurt someone, there would be plenty of opportunities for him to take action. With Grand Preceptor Chao's character, how could he let go of the family who had once poisoned his daughter? He would definitely kill them all. Chapter 37. The truth suddenly hit Qin Yining in the face and caught her off guard. He vaguely felt that he had been fooled. But looking at the lovely girl with an apple-like face and big eyes in front of him, Qin Yining felt lucky. Fortunately, Tang Meng was fine. Fortunately, things were not as he imagined. "Thank you, Wang Yi." Qin Yining solemnly bowed to Prince Ning. "Then I'll take Miss Tang away." Prince Ning calmly sat in the first seat and waved to Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled at Tang Meng and said, "Miss Tang, please come with me." "Miss, you don't have to be so polite. Just call me by my name. From now on, you will be the master, and I will be the servant. I will never forget the kindness you showed me today." Tang Meng blinked her big round eyes and said very seriously. Qin Yining smiled bitterly. "I didn't save you. It seems like my actions were superfluous." Tang Meng shook her head repeatedly. "Miss, since my father asked me to become a monk with the pharmacopoeia handed down in my family, I knew that something would happen to the Tang family sooner or later. But then I really ruined it. Although I became an outsider, I got used to the fickleness of the world because of what happened to the Tang family. The musical house took me back and forced me to return to the secular world. I refused, and they tortured me. Later, the Zhaoyun agency rented me. I was brought back by Wang Yi, and I lived a peaceful life for a few days. Tang Meng's eyes were filled with tears. Miss, except for Wang Yi, you are the only one who took the initiative to help my family. You and I met by chance, and there is no karma between us. You, the daughter of a boudoir, can withstand the pressure of rumors outside to come to the mansion to save me. I know the risk you took. I can't repay this kindness in my life. Her words moved Qin Yining, Master Zhong, Ruelan, and Qiu Lu. Qin Yining saved people because he didn't want a good girl's life to be ruined, and he didn't want Master Zhong's family to be implicated in the disaster. He never thought that he would be grateful or rewarded. Now that he heard Tang Meng's words, he blushed first. He took Tang Meng and Prince Ning's hand, bowed again, and left quickly with his men. Prince Ning had been sitting at the head of the table and had seen everything. Suddenly, he smiled playfully and said, I didn't expect that old fox Qin Meng could raise such a warm-hearted girl. That's right. A person slowly walked out from behind the ground cover. It was the young man that Qin Yining had met earlier. Prince Ning casually cupped his hands towards the young man. Did your highness hear what she said just now? The young man nodded, a trace of distress in his expression. She's right. These stubborn old fools in the capital who think they're invincible are actually frogs at the bottom of a well. Even now, they still have the time to wrangle over whether to fight or not. This king has seen through them long ago. These people are a bunch of useless trash. If they really do break into the city in the future, they won't be so scared that they'll piss their pants. Ha ha ha. Prince Ning laughed loudly. Hearing this, the young man also burst into laughter. He stood beside Prince Ning with his hands behind his back and looked at the painting of the 8 horses for a long time. Slowly, a blush appeared on his face. Prince Ning understood, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he asked, Has your highness really made up your mind? The young man paused, then said, What? Does your highness not agree and want to back out? Prince Ning looked into the young man's eyes, his gaze sharp. He said in a mocking voice, This king wants to back out. This king didn't expect your highness to take the initiative to impeach Grand Preceptor Chao. This king has always thought that your highness was only a master of calligraphy and painting and didn't care about politics. The young man smiled bitterly. Is your highness laughing at my lack of achievements for many years? Prince Ning laughed loudly and said, This king originally only wanted to make an alliance with Duke Ding, but that little fox Sun Yuanming refused to take a stand. Today, to help you and me, he even pulled in Qin Meng. Now, it's easier to impeach that old thing Chao Bingzhong. The young man was a little worried. I'm afraid that Prime Minister Qin won't agree. He has to agree even if he doesn't want to. His good daughter has made the decision for him. No matter what, Tang Meng is already his daughter's maidservant and will be protected by the Qin's mansion. Qing Lu and those two-faced cowards will definitely take a side when they see this result. Prince Ning patted the young man's shoulder to comfort him, saying, Your Highness, don't worry. This matter will definitely succeed. That coquettish woman babbles all day long and doesn't do anything serious. She can't give birth to an egg, and she wants to cut off my brother's bloodline. That's just wishful thinking. Even a little girl knows her end, but she herself can't figure it out. How ridiculous. This king is going to expose her coquettish appearance this time. Let's see what she can do without her father's support. At this time, Qin Yining had already taken Tang Meng into the carriage. Master Zhong, Ruelan, and Qiu Lu were all following outside. They rushed all the way to the cloud, stepping in under the banner of Zhao Yun Department. Qin Yining smiled and said, You stay in the inn first. In these 2 days, I'll find an opportunity to come out and take you to renounce asceticism. After renouncing asceticism, you'll enter the mansion and follow me. We can also take care of each other in the first place. Yes. Tang Meng smiled and nodded. Miss, you don't have to be so polite with me. I'll be your maidservant from now on. You can just order me around. Qin Yining nodded. She didn't expect Tang Meng to accept reality so calmly. Perhaps it was easier for people to recognize their own position after experiencing a great storm and being unable to turn the situation around and being driven into a corner. The group of people arrived at the Cloud Stepping Inn. Qin Yining ordered Master Zhong to arrange a secluded courtyard for Tang Meng to settle down first. Then she called Master Zhong over and said, I'll have to trouble Master Zhong to take care of Miss Tang. I'll think of a way to come out in these 2 days. At this time, Master Zhong had resolved the crisis and was feeling refreshed. When he looked at Qin Yining again, his eyes were filled with respect and intimacy. He bowed and said, Miss, don't worry. I'll definitely do it well. Qin Yining heard the change in the way he addressed her. She smiled and said, Good. In the future, I'll have to rely on Master Zhong for many things. It's just that it's getting late today. The matter of checking the accounts can only be changed to another day. Yes, Miss, don't worry. This little one has already seen the accounts sent over. When Miss has the time, you can look through them. If the Fu's old lord asks, Miss can say that you went around the shops under Zhao Yun Agency today and inspected them. You can come out another day to check the accounts. We have 3 restaurants under our banner. They are Returning Forest Restaurant, Drunken Cloud Restaurant and Jade Cup Restaurant. There are also 2 inns. One is the Cloud Stepping Inn that we're currently at. The other is Yuxing Inn on the eastern main street. Master Zhong is quick-witted. I'll just reply like that. Qin Yining looked at the sky and said, It's getting late. I should go back. Yes, this little one will have them escort Mississippi. This little one's entire family will definitely repay Miss for saving our lives. Miss, please accept my bow. Master Zhong said this and knelt down to pay his respects. Qin Yining helped Master Zhong up and said with a smile, Master Zhong, you don't have to be so polite. In the future, we need to support each other even more to go further. Master Zhong nodded with a smile. Miss is right. Qin Yining told Master Zhong to take good care of Tang Meng and arrange for Tang Meng to return to the secular world. Then she left with Ruelan and Qiu Lu, hurrying back to the Prime Minister's Fu. In the carriage, Ruelan and Qiu Lu were originally excited. However, when they saw Qin Yining's expression, they became worried. He had successfully rescued her, but why did the young lady not look happy? Both of them had questions. Ruelan thought more, so she didn't immediately ask. Qiu Lu, on the other hand, was straightforward and asked, Miss, why are you unhappy? Qin Yining came back to her senses and murmured with a sigh, This time, I'm afraid something bad is going to happen. What? Ruelan and Qiu Lu's hearts skipped a beat. They said nervously, Why do you say that? What's going to happen? Qin Yining said in a low voice, Think about what Ning Wang said today and his attitude. He took her away to protect Miss Tang. However, he pretended to kidnap her and didn't explain to the Zhao Yun Agency. He allowed the notoriety of kidnapping to spread throughout the capital. Why? Ruelan and Qiu Lu were stunned. He did this just to use Qing Lu to put pressure on the Zhao Yun Agency. If the Zhao Yun Agency really couldn't withstand the pressure and went to Ning Wang to ask for Miss Tang, I think they would be able to get her back easily like today. Miss, you mean? Ruelan thought it through and couldn't help but turn pale. Everyone knows that Ning Wang kidnapped Miss Tang and refused to return her. However, when the Zhao Yun Agency went to ask for her, Ning Wang actually returned her. I'm afraid everyone will think that Ning Wang and the Zhao Yun Agency have a good relationship and are in cahoots. In the past, the owner of the Zhaoyun agency was my eldest cousin, and he had the Ding General Manor behind him. If things went according to the original development, everyone would think that Ding General Manor and Ning Wang were in cahoots. But now, I'm the one who started it. I'm not only the daughter of the Prime Minister, but also the granddaughter of Ding General Manor. Qin Yining's face was very pale when she said this, and her hands and feet were as cold as ice. This time, I'm afraid that I fell into Ning Wang's trap on behalf of my eldest cousin. I accidentally tied Ding General Manor and the Prime Minister to Ning Wang's side. Just wait and see. It won't be long before the news that I successfully took Miss Tang away will spread. Qiu Lu's eyes turned red when she heard this. She stomped her feet and said, I thought that Ning Wang was a chivalrous person. I didn't expect him to be so evil. In order to win over Ding General Manor, he actually used such a method. Yes, Ruilan also said, so, Duchess Ding's arrangement. Ruilan suddenly realized that her words were suspected of sowing discord, so she hurriedly stopped talking. Qin Yining said, Grandmother may not have bad intentions. She just thought that since I'm a little girl, the only way to deal with it is to let Master Zhong take the blame, and then I'll change the head shopkeeper. In this way, it doesn't matter if I don't take the blame. But neither grandmother nor my father thought that I would go and ask for Tang Ling. Ruilan persuaded, Miss, now that things have come to this, you have good intentions. Now the best thing to do is to think about how to reply to the old madam and the Prime Minister. What if they blame you? Qin Yining smiled bitterly. She had only returned to the Fu for a few days, but she had already experienced so many people's fickleness and schemes. She originally thought that after returning home, her life would be very peaceful. Rich families didn't lack food and clothing, and at least they wouldn't be as dark as those struggling to survive at the bottom. But she didn't expect that the people in these wealthy families would scheme and frame others for benefits and power. They weren't any less than those struggling to survive in the streets. Qin Yining took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She began to think about the impact this matter would have on the Prime Minister's manor, Ding General Manor, and herself. Chapter 38. By the time she returned to the Prime Minister's residence, the sky had already darkened, and it was snowing. Qin Yining walked to Xixiao Garden with a paper umbrella under the service of 2 maidservants. She first went to greet Old Madam. Old Madam had just set up dinner. The members of the Sun clan, 2nd Madam, and 3rd Madam were all respectfully waiting on the side. Qin Huining accompanied Old Madam to eat. Sister Yi, you're back. You haven't eaten dinner yet, right? Come and eat with me. Seeing Qin Yining enter, Old Madam smiled and instructed Ji Xiang, send someone to bring Mrs. Food box over. Ji Xiang smiled and answered, yes. When he passed by Qin Yining, he respectfully bowed before leaving. Many thanks, Old Madam. Qin Yining was slightly relieved. At the very least, she would be able to eat this dinner. On the way back, Qin Yining had already imagined several ways her father and Old Madam would punish her. None of them would be easy. The worst-case scenario was that it would happen immediately and she wouldn't have time to prepare. She could be considered lucky to be able to eat her fill before the incident happened. Qin Yining thought optimistically. For a moment, she felt that if her father and Old Madam knew that she only thought about eating, they might be angered to death. She also felt that it was funny. The depression of doing a good thing but getting into trouble was finally relieved. After eating dinner, Qin Yining told Old Madam what she had discussed with shopkeeper Zhong. Today, I looked around and was delayed for a few hours. I have to go check the accounts another day. Old Madam didn't care about these things. Qin Yining was a girl. In any case, she wouldn't cause trouble for her. Just as the room was filled with harmony, they suddenly heard footsteps outside, followed by a servant's respectful greeting, "First Master." "Old Madam, First Master is back." Someone replied into the room and lifted the bamboo curtain for Qin Huayuan. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. He knew that things were not going well, so he stood up with Huaining and stood to the side. Qin Huayuan entered the door. He first bowed to the old madam, then nodded to the Sun Clan, second madam, and third madam. Old madam asked with concern, "Has Brother Meng eaten dinner yet? Should I ask them to prepare?" "There's no need, mother. I still have something important to do." Qin Huayuan turned around and looked at Qin Yining. His eyes were cold. It was a coldness that Qin Yining had never seen on Qin Huayuan before. Qin Huayuan looked at Qin Yining's face, which was very similar to his own when he was young, and his clenched fists tightened. His voice was trembling and hoarse as he suppressed his anger. He asked fiercely, "Qin Yining, what have you done today?" This reprimand shocked everyone who had been chatting and laughing. Everyone looked at the father and daughter who were confronting each other at the same time. Qin Huaining used a lot of effort to prevent himself from showing a gloating expression. Sun Clan's wife asked with a puzzled expression, "What's wrong with Laoi? If there's anything, we can talk about it. Don't disturb mother." After the incident at Duke Ding's Fu, she had changed her view of Qin Yining and subconsciously wanted to protect her. Qin Huayuan was too lazy to pay attention to this woman from the Sun Clan. He didn't even look at her and only stared straight at Qin Yining. Qin Yining sighed softly. She lifted her skirt and knelt down, saying, replying to father, "Daughter fell into Prince Ning's trap today. Things have indeed developed in a direction that daughter didn't expect." Old Madam, Sun Clan, Qin Huaining, and the others didn't understand what she meant. Upon hearing this, Qin Huayuan's uncontrollable anger, which was like a volcanic eruption, was suddenly choked. He originally thought that Qin Yining was young, spirited, chivalrous, impulsive, and brainless young miss. However, the words "fell into Prince Ning's trap" quietly showed him her political sensitivity. It seemed that he had underestimated his daughter. Not only was she courageous, but she was also very intelligent. Qin Huayuan was originally full of anger and wanted to punish Qin Yining, but now he felt a burst of helplessness. He thought, it would be great if this wasn't a daughter, but a son. If he had a son who could cause such trouble for him and come home nervously to ask for his father's support, the scene would be very interesting. Unfortunately, Qin Huayuan pursed his lips and stared at Qin Yining without saying a word. Qin Yining knelt submissively with her back ramrod straight. Although her expression was calm, she was so nervous that her hands and feet were cold. Everyone didn't understand what kind of riddle the father and son were playing. Old Madam couldn't help but ask, "Brother Meng, what exactly happened?" Qin Huayuan sighed, lifted his clothes, and sat down on the side. He then recounted how Qin Yining single-handedly went to Prince Ning's mansion to ask for Qin Yining and successfully got her back. The group of people was dumbfounded. "How dare you? Sister Yi, how dare you?" Old Madam pointed at Qin Yining and said, "A girl in the boudoir actually dared to meet an outsider without permission. Have you learned the rules these days?" She then angrily glared at the Sun Clan and said, "Eldest daughter-in-law, this is the good girl that you taught." The Sun Clan felt that they had lost face. She rushed up and fiercely slapped Qin Yining. This time, she used all her strength. Her sharp nails scratched Qin Yining's cheeks, leaving 2 bloodstains. The Sun Clan's hands hurt from the slap. Qin Yining's cheeks quickly swelled from the slap, and a trace of blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. The Sun Clan's hatred wasn't appeased. They were reprimanded by Old Madam for not teaching their daughter well, so they felt very wronged and couldn't help but scold, "I told you to restrain your vulgar behavior after returning to the mansion, but you didn't listen. Where did a girl like you get such courage to take the initiative to meet an outsider?" Did you listen to my words in one ear and forget them in the other? You're not sensible, but you caused our eldest branch to be humiliated. I'll beat you to death, you unfilial daughter. The Sun clan raised their hands and was about to slap her again. Qin Huayuan coldly looked at old Madam and the Sun clan's teaching. He only listened to their women's opinions and couldn't grasp the main point at all. They even revolved this matter around the topic of not meeting an outsider. He felt a burst of weariness in his heart. How could these people understand the matters of the imperial court? In contrast, he felt that Qin Yining's words of falling into Prince Ning's trap were very clear. Even if she made a mistake, he didn't dislike this daughter. Enough. Qin Huayuan impatiently waved away the Sun clan's slap that was about to land and reprimanded, "Your rules aren't good, but you're so ruthless when teaching your daughter. I think you're the one who should learn rules." The Sun clan's eyes widened in disbelief, and tears quickly accumulated in her eyes. She angrily said, "What are you saying, master? What do you mean by my rules aren't good? Didn't I teach my daughter a lesson for you? If you're not willing to let me teach her a lesson, why did you say this in front of us? If you don't want to teach her a lesson, don't tell us. You're simply unreasonable." Qin Huayuan frowned and looked at Qin Yining. He said, "Sister Yi, come with me." After he finished speaking, he turned and walked out. Qin Yining stood up silently and saluted old Madam and the others. Then, she followed Qin Huayuan out of the side hall. Inside the room, the Sun clan watched Qin Huayuan and Qin Yining leave. She was so angry that she cried loudly and pounded the short table with grievance, causing the porcelain on the table to jingle. "I've seen through it. I'm old and can't enter Qin Mang's eyes. Qin Mang doesn't like me and wants to force me to death." Old Madam was originally thinking about what had happened and Qin Huayuan's reaction. Her mind was in a mess. Who would have thought that the Sun clan would make a fuss? It was so noisy that she couldn't calm down and think about why her son had such an attitude. After hearing what she said, she felt even more disdain for her. If Sun Haihan wasn't the legitimate daughter of Duke Ding, she would have thrown this shit-stirrer out long ago. Old Madam angrily said, "You're still shouting. I think Brother Meng wasn't wrong about you. Your rules are just like this. If you want to cry, don't cry here. Go back to Xingning Garden and cry. If you're still angry, you can pack up and go back to your maternal family now." Seeing Old Madam say such harsh words, Second Madam and Third Madam hurriedly came forward to persuade her. Qin Huaining cried and hugged the Sun clan's arm, "Mother, you should quickly apologize to grandmother. You can't go back to your maternal family." The Sun clan's temper was impatient. She was hot-blooded and didn't think at all. She only acted according to her heart. After hearing Qin Huaining's persuasion, she stood up and slammed the table. "Can't. Why can't I? If you have the ability, then let Qin Meng divorce me now. I can't give birth to a son. Qin Meng's concubines can't give birth to an egg. I know Old Madam has long blamed me. She doesn't like me anyway. If you have a candidate, then bring Qin Meng in to give birth to a son for him. I don't care anymore." After the Sun clan finished speaking, she turned around and walked out. After taking 2 steps, she didn't forget to pull Qin Huaining, "Sister Hui, come with mother." She didn't want to stay in the Fu and be bullied. Qin Huaining's expression changed, and she hurriedly shook her head. "Mother, don't go. Daughter also won't go with you." What a joke. If she went to Duke Ding's Fu now, she would be hated by Duke Ding's wife. However, the Sun clan made up her mind. She had lost face tonight. She must make Qin Huayuan carry her back in a palanquin with 8 carriers. The last time she came back, she took the initiative to apologize. It was enough to make her angry. Could it be that she had to endure it every time? The Sun clan didn't care about Qin Huining's persuasion and pulled her away. Old Madam was so angry that she pounded the table and almost threw out the brass tobacco pouch next to her. Scram, scram, scram. This kind of upbringing, I've also learned something new. My Mengu is cultured and refined, educated and reasonable. How could I be so blind to bring back such a shrew for him? Second Madam inwardly rolled her eyes. Back then, wasn't it because she wanted to climb up the big tree that was Duke Ding's Fu? Why didn't she dislike her eldest sister-in-law for being a shrew when she borrowed other people's strength to climb up? Second Madam couldn't stand Old Madam's ungrateful appearance, so she didn't take any action. Third Madam immediately went forward to persuade Old Madam, coaxing her to not get angry. Qin Yining followed Qin Huaiyuan to the outer courtyard study. Just as he knelt down, he heard a servant come in and report, "Master, someone came in and said that eldest Madam wants to go back to her maternal home again. They're making a fuss right now." Mother Jean of Xingning Garden sent someone to reply, begging you to go back and take a look. Chapter 39. Qin Yining saw that her father was still angry, so she immediately knelt in front of Qin Huaiyuan and said in a low voice, "Daughter is stupid and fell into Prince Ning's trap." After saying this, she didn't say anything else. Qin Huaiyuan was waiting for Qin Yining to make a long and tedious apology, but she wasn't willing to say anything. It seemed like she felt that her only mistake was falling into a trap, but she didn't make the decision to save people on her own. Qin Huaiyuan was both angry and amused. This girl was still being stubborn in front of him. Just as he was about to reprimand her, a manservant's trembling voice entered his ears. In reply to Master, there's a message from inside saying that Madam is about to leave the second residence and is asking for Master's instructions. Are you going to persuade her or not? At least say something. Qin Huaiyuan already had a sense of loneliness. When he heard that the Sun clan was making a fuss again, he finally impatiently reprimanded, "If she wants to leave, then tell her to scram. It's best if she doesn't come back." Hearing this, the manservant finally realized how angry Qin Huaiyuan was. He hurriedly saluted and scampered away. Qin Huaiyuan supported his forehead with his large, well-defined hand. He leaned half of his body on the redwood square table beside him, looking very tired. Qin Yining felt even more guilty when she saw Qin Huaiyuan like this. It was her father who brought her home from Liang City. It was her father who saved her from the fate of being banished to a farmstead. It was her father who confirmed her identity as the daughter of the first wife. Her father was overflowing with talent and ability. He became the prime minister in his early 40s. With all of these added together, Qin Yining's admiration for Qin Huaiyuan deepened. She could see that her mother wasn't talented and had an arrogant temper. She had nothing in common with her father, which had already made him very angry. But because she was soft-hearted, she had brought even more trouble to her father. She didn't regret saving people. But she hated herself for falling into a trap. "Father, please calm down. Daughter knows her mistake." Her father was working hard outside, yet he still had to face a mess when he returned home. He also had to deal with the mess that his daughter had created. It was really her fault. At first, I couldn't bear to see the two innocent families suffer, so I wanted to try my best. Prince Ning happily let me be his maid. I immediately realized that I had fallen into his trap. In the future, your daughter will not be so reckless. I will definitely think thrice before I act. Father, please don't be angry anymore. What if you hurt your body? Qin Yining pressed his forehead against the floor. His attitude of admitting his mistake was very sincere. Qin Huaiyuan sighed softly. From Qin Yining's words, Qin Huaiyuan understood Qin Yining's idea. It seemed that this girl didn't think that saving people was wrong. Was he just angry that he had fallen into his trap? Qin Huayuan wanted to teach his daughter to clean the snow in front of your own door. Don't worry about the frost on other people's roof. However, he couldn't say such utilitarian words in front of his daughter. Moreover, Qin Huayuan had always felt that he was like a broken string that no one would listen to. He did not expect that the words of understanding would not come from his mother's mouth, nor from his wife's mouth. Instead, it was his own daughter who said the words that he liked to hear the most. Forget it. He had always been a forward-looking person. Since it had already happened, he wouldn't hold on to it and refuse to let it go. Instead of complaining to the heavens and the earth, it was better to think of a way to deal with it. Thinking of this, Qin Huayuan said, "Servants." Outside, a manservant immediately responded. Qin Huayuan looked down at Qin Yining, who was kneeling on the floor, and said slowly, "Take forth young miss to the ancestral hall to reflect on her mistakes. She's not allowed to come out until she has thoroughly read and memorized women's commandments and internal discipline. During this time, fourth young Mrs. maids are not allowed to serve her. They are all locked up in Snow Pear Courtyard to reflect on their mistakes." "Yes. Daughter thanks father for his teachings." Qin Yining kowtowed and respectfully retreated. The news that Qin Yining was locked up in the ancestral hall to memorize books quickly spread throughout the Fu. When the news reached the ears of the Sun clan, who was still in front of the drooping flower gate, she was so angry that she immediately smashed the brass heater in her hand, creating a dent in the heater and spilling charcoal all over the floor. "She's truly a jinx. Ever since she came back, she hasn't had a single day of peace." Mother Jean sighed and said, "Madam, please calm down. Let's not stay here anymore. Let's return to Xingming Garden first and discuss further." "No, wet nurse, don't try to persuade me. Right now, I'm just waiting for Qin Meng's response. If he doesn't want me to stay, then why should I stay?" The Sun clan stubbornly stuck out her neck. Mother Jean felt a headache coming on. Originally, the first madam had nothing to do with this, but now she was making a fuss. Wasn't this just looking for trouble? Right at this moment, the Sun clan saw Qin Meng's manservant sticking his head out of the half-open drooping flower gate. The Sun clan reprimanded him, "Little monkey, what are you dawdling for? What did your prime minister say?" The manservant didn't dare to repeat what Qin Huayuan had said. "If she wants to leave, then tell her to scram. It's best if she doesn't come back." With a smile, he said, "Madam, the Prime Minister is busy." The Sun clan didn't wait for him to finish speaking and was already wiping her tears as she strode out. "Wet nurse, prepare the carriage. I'm going home. If he doesn't want me to stay, then what's the point of me staying?" Mother Jin's heart was very tired. She hurriedly went up to block the Sun clan's path and didn't let her leave. She also hurriedly gave Qin Huaining a look. Qin Huaining, on the other hand, was constantly wiping her tears and couldn't see what was going on. After all, Mother Jean was a servant. Even the two head maidservants, Kai Lan and Kai Ju, didn't dare to pull the Sun clan's way. They could only circle around her and persuade her, anxiously stomping their feet. After this torment, the Sun clan finally sat in the carriage. After they were seated, the Sun clan finally remembered that Qin Huaining had just followed her to the drooping flower gate. She asked, "Where's Sister Hui?" Mother Jean sighed, "Miss Huaining only sent Madam to the second gate. She didn't follow you." The Sun clan's tear-filled face revealed a shocked expression. "Didn't she just say that she wanted to accompany me back?" Mother Jean didn't answer. She was now beginning to feel that Duchess Ding's reprimand was correct. On this matter, although Qin Huaining was persuading the Sun clan, it didn't have any effect. Instead, it made the Sun clan even more irritable. "Madam, in the future, don't disregard your health too much. Anger is harmful to the body." Mother Jean originally wanted to say that she shouldn't trust Qin Huining too much in the future, but she swallowed the words back down. These words didn't have any effect on a servant like her. She needed to report back to Duchess Ding. At this time, in Ci Shao Garden, the old madam wasn't as furious as she usually was. Instead, she dismissed everyone around her and only left Mammy Qin to talk to her. Lu Juan, look at Brother Meng's appearance today. Is he angry at Sister Yi? Why do I feel that there's something fishy about it? No one knew a son better than a mother. The first person in the old madam's heart was her most promising eldest son. She had the deepest feelings for her eldest son and understood him the most. According to the old madam's understanding, since Qin Yining had made such a big mistake this time, Qin Huayuan would only tell her about it and let her teach him. Why would he feel heartache for Qin Yining being slapped by the Sun clan? Why would he take him away to personally teach him a lesson and punish him? In the end, did he like Qin Yining or not? Mammy Qin said, in this servant's opinion, Prime Minister should be teaching fourth miss like a son. The old madam had already guessed it, but she couldn't grasp the main point. After Mammy Qin's reminder, all the intermittent thoughts immediately connected. She nodded heavily and said, that's right, Brother Meng really thinks this way. Otherwise, why would he value Sister Yi so much? Looking at it this way, although Sister Yi caused a big disaster, she also gained Brother Meng's favor. Not only is fourth miss intelligent, but she also has courage and insight. Although she's a woman of the boudoir, she has a chivalrous spirit that doesn't lose to a man. Old madam, don't you think that fourth miss's appearance and temperament are very similar to Prime Minister's when he was young? That's right. The old madam nodded repeatedly. Recalling her eldest son's appearance when he was young, it seemed that she had returned to those beautiful years. She was very fond of him. Brother Meng doesn't have a male heir yet, and he met a daughter who is so similar to him. It's inevitable that he likes her a little more. But Sister Yi is so audacious this time. After all, she's done something so wrong. Old madam, don't worry about it. Mammy Qin brought over a teacup and said with a smile, this servant feels that Prime Minister is very happy to solve his daughter's problem. Happy to do it. The old madam took the teacup and thought about her son. She also remembered the interesting things that happened when her late husband taught her son. She nodded in understanding. First, she laughed, then tears filled her eyes. Ingguang doesn't have the good fortune. If he could see his children and grandchildren being so capable, I don't know how happy he would be. Mammy Qin saw that the old madam was thinking about the old master who had passed away, so she quickly comforted her in a soft voice. She comforted the old madam until her heart calmed down. Then, she said, Prime Minister let fourth miss go to the ancestral temple to recite women's commandments and internal instruction. He also didn't allow the people around her to serve her. The old madam thought for a moment and said, since Brother Meng values her, she must have some benefits. The people around her aren't here, so you should make more arrangements these days. Instead of counting on Sister Yi's mother, it's better to count on the old world's red rain. Old madam, don't be angry. Your health is more important. As for eldest foreign and Prime Minister, it's just a small quarrel between husband and wife. It'll be fine in 2 days. The old madam was annoyed when she thought about the Sun clan. She couldn't help but scold, I can't stand that arrogant appearance of hers the most. It's just that she has a good birth. She's just living off her ancestors' achievements. She has no talent and no virtue. How can she be worthy of my brother Meng? Mammy Qin saw that the old madam was angry again, so she couldn't help but comfort her with a few more words. After the old madam washed and went to bed, Mammy Qin called a daughter-in-law and a young maidservant from Ci Shao courtyard. She said, the old madam ordered you two to go to the ancestral temple to serve fourth miss in her studies. Come with me. The daughter-in-law and her husband's family were surnamed Go, so they were all called Go family. The young maidservant was called Xiaoling. She had just turned 10 years old and looked very clever. The two of them bowed to Mammy Chin and ordered the older female servants to carry the bedding, charcoal stove, and other trivial things to the ancestral temple. The ancestral temple was located in a quiet courtyard in the southeast corner of the outer courtyard, next to the 3-story E-gate. The main room enshrined the memorial tablets of the family Chin's ancestors. The side rooms on both sides were often cleaned and tidied up. It was more than enough for people to live in. It was even more tidy and gorgeous than Qin Yining's snow pear courtyard. When Mammy Chin arrived, Qin Yining was already holding a book, Internal Training, and reading it.